And it's not from our schools. It's most cases that's from home or outside. And I'm happy that it's not all the kids. Those kids in the group, and fortunately there's those ones who are able to realize that these racial connotations and undertones are not going to assist going forward. So this behavior generally is from outside. I put squarely on the doorstep of parents. Parents need to do more to really educate these kids, because these are not children who were born in apartheid. These are children who are born in democracy. All they've ever known is a diversified, united nation.
COSATU in the Western Cape is calling for a thorough investigation into the fate of 11 fishermen who went missing when their vessel sank in Hout Bay about 2 months ago. The Union Federation picketed outside the offices of Sea Harvest in Cape Town, but left the Memorandum of Demands at their doorstep after the company refused to receive the document. There were 20 crew members aboard the vessel when it sank. 9 were rescued. COSATU's Malvin de Bruyn says they are concerned about the safety of workers offshore.
We know that there's investigation, so we can't say at this stage that they are at fault, but we want the investigation to be conducted. It must be done thoroughly so that we can know what really happened on that sad day, and that we know if the company is at fault, that the full law must take its course. So we are waiting on that investigation report, and we will keep tabs on that particular issue.
A Northern Cape man has been sentenced to 2 life terms in the Griquastad Magistrates Court for raping his 12-year-old niece in 2015. The girl was on her way to a family funeral in the Valblok informal settlement when she was accosted by her uncle, who raped her in a veld during the night and only released her the following morning. The suspect was arrested hours later. Police spokesperson Sergio Koch.
After the lengthy trial, accused was sentenced in the Griquastad Magistrate Court as follows. Count 1, for rape he received 1 life sentence. Count 2, for rape he received a 2nd life sentence. He was also declared unfit to possess a firearm, and his name will be entered into the National Register for Sex Offenders.
In another rape case, also in the Northern Cape, a 32-year-old man from Victoria West has been sentenced to life imprisonment in the Colesberg Regional Court for raping his 30-year-old ex-girlfriend in February last year. The accused threatened her with a knife after forcibly gaining entry to her home. Police spokesperson Sergio Koch again.
The accused tried fleeing but was arrested on the 14th of April 2023. Bail was successfully opposed and he remained in custody up until his sentence to life imprisonment at the Colesberg Regional Court. He was declared unfit to possess a firearm and his name will be entered in the National Register for Sex Offenders.
And the state of Qatar says the killing of Hamas senior leader Ismail Haniyeh will derail the ceasefire negotiations between Hamas and Israel. Qatar and Egypt have been facilitating the talks. Ditaba Tsotetsi has more.
In a statement, Qatar says that this is a violation of international and humanitarian law. It says that this killing will lead to regional war and chaos. The statement further says that the latest development undermines the chances of peace. Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran attending the inauguration of the Iranian president. The state of Qatar has sent a message of condolences to the family of Haniyeh. Ditaba Tsotetsi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The top story at 3 o'clock, Gauteng Education MEC Matume Chilwane has blamed the latest alleged racial incidents at Pretoria Girls High on family backgrounds. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
In your sports this hour, MTNA tournament prize money increase. Smith and Cobbett in 200-meter breaststroke semi-finals at the Olympics, and heavyweight champion Usyk promises payout if Ukrainians win medals. I'll have more on this and other sports stories at 3:30.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
When Freddie, a troubled woman, is nearly assaulted outside a nightclub, the toilet attendant steps in to help. Baba, a former child soldier, acts with swift, unstoppable brutality. She's entranced. The pair form an instant, intoxicating connection. Something dark within both of them quickly emerges. Soon, they set about exacting revenge on people from Freddy's past. Baba's skill for violence and Freddy's tinge of psychopathy prove a lethal combination. But they are not the only ones on the hunt. We hunt together, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 24th of July. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It may be chilly out there, but let me wish you a warm welcome. Welcome to the National Pulse. Welcome to the show. And you, wherever you may be around the country, you certainly play a huge role in driving what it is we talk about. So you drive whatever it is that we refer to and the issues that move the National Pulse. So thank you. Lots to talk about. We'll talk about there's this issue around the Public Procurement Act now, and the Western Cape, well, they certainly are not pleased with what that means. We'll also cover the KZN's State of the Province report, so we'll look at that too. We must talk about the issue around the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader. We'll talk about that and a range of other issues as well. And we'll end the show with always something like really good news stories about somebody winning in their spaces. So every reason for you to stay connected. What for you then? As always, what for you moves the National Pulse today? You can have your own original thoughts on that, and I'd like you to connect and engage with me like ASAP. Do that firstly by calling in 086 000 2032. You can WhatsApp, text, voice note 0614 104 107, and you can tweet, as many of you do, and it's great that you do that. The hashtag to use, the National Pulse, tag me, Ashraf Garda, do tag SAFM Radio. And then add your comments in this. But always when you do that, if you have a picture of your dial locked into SAFM, that's even like double bonus. So wherever you may be, great that you do that. You know that you can listen to the show not just on radio, but also on live streaming. And you can also download the SABC Plus app. So basically every reason for you to connect in South Africa and anywhere around the world. Let's start with my daily That's My Point opener. So I am an African. I'm a South African. And I'm not talking directly, by the way, about the whole Miss South Africa issue regarding Chidima Vanessa Adetshina. I'm not talking about that issue directly. But I will say this much. It has certainly got me thinking about what is it that makes one a South African. Now, the legal way has got to be that you are documented that says you're a South African. When you are, then you're already a South African, whatever the reasons are that you attain South African citizenship. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm very interested in you and me in terms of how do you see your role as a South African? How do you see your contribution to the country? And that's outside documentation issues, right? So my question to you is a challenge to me as well, right? What goals do you set for yourself that is aligned to the national goals, right? Do your actions advance the cause of South Africa, or do your actions undermine the cause of South Africa? That's it, really. When we talk about what is it being a South African, it is, do you contribute or don't you contribute? So my question then is, if I asked you, are you a nation builder? Would you say yes or would you say no? And that answer, being in South Africa, will determine just your entire attitude towards being, I am a South African or I am an African. And then whatever it is, you can then proclaim proudly to say, well, I am a South African. It is your actions, it's your commitment to a cause It's being this nation builder. It is committing to actions that effectively impacts on making this country a better country for all the people of our nation to live in it. That is the essence of being, of saying and being, the sense of I am a South African. Well, that's my point. What's yours?
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right. Do you want to add to that? I certainly like to get your opinions on the state of being of a South African, because I'm really keen to play up this issue of just how many of us, we often get very obsessed about, look, I know the legal part. I'm not talking about the legal home affairs documentation. That's really not what I'm talking about. How many of us totally in our day-to-day lives align our personal selves and our personal goals with the goals to build South Africa into a nation that we can be proud of, a nation that truly improves the lives of others? Or do we leave that to politicians or to others? 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Right. So we'll chat to, we'll get an update on the issue around the Hamas story now in terms of what happens next without their leader. We'll do that in a few moments' time. But first things first, I want to pick up on this issue here, right? There's a couple of things that we will talk about. Firstly, the Israeli military has claimed that it's killed the Hamas. Let's get this right. The Israeli military claimed that it killed the Hezbollah's senior commander. That's in an airstrike on Beirut, right? That happened the day before, in retaliation for a cross-border rocket attack that killed 12 youngsters 3 days ago, which it blamed on the Lebanese armed group itself, right? And then, to move forward, the Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated in the early hours of the morning in Iran, right? The Palestinian militant group said that drawing fears of wider escalation in a region shaken by Israel's war in Gaza and a worsening conflict in Lebanon. Now, Reuters, their reporter, filed this report.
An Israeli airstrike on the densely populated southern suburbs of Beirut heightened fears of an escalation of wider conflict in the Middle East. Israel's military said it was targeting a senior Hezbollah commander in what it called a retaliation for a cross-border rocket attack that killed 12 young people. Whether or not it leads to a wider escalation will depend on how Hezbollah chooses to respond, says Rhonda Slim, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute.
This is a highly densely populated area. I expect the casualty rate to increase. The combination of a hit on a civilian site and leading to a civilian casualty rate, that will mean that Hezbollah will respond. The question is how they will respond.
Beirut's southern suburbs are a stronghold of the Iran-backed Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. The Israeli military said the airstrike killed Hezbollah's most senior military commander. Lebanon's health minister told Reuters that the strike also killed another person and injured dozens, some critically. On her way to a campaign stop in Atlanta, Georgia, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke to reporters about the strike.
Israel has a right to defend itself, and I unequivocally support Israel's right to remain secure and to defend the security of Israel. What we know in particular is it has a right to defend itself against a terrorist organization, which is exactly what Hezbollah is. But all of that being said, we still must work on a diplomatic solution to end these attacks, and we will continue to do that work. Thank you all.
Beirut had been on edge for days, anticipating an Israeli reprisal. Days earlier, a rocket strike on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on Saturday killed 12 children and teens on a football field. Hezbollah denied involvement in the attack, but said the group fired rockets at a military target in the Golan Heights. The killing of the youths prompted a high-level Western diplomatic flurry to avert a major escalation that could inflame the wider region. The Israeli military said it had issued no new instructions for civil defense in Israel, a possible indication that Israel did not plan further strikes immediately. Lebanon's foreign minister said his government condemned the Israeli strike in Beirut and planned to file a complaint to the United Nations over it. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he did not believe a fight was inevitable between Hezbollah and Israel, though he remained concerned about the potential for escalation.
Okay, so that was the first piece regarding the airstrikes that killed Hezbollah's most senior commander, right? That's the first one. Then further response from Reuters regarding the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh.
Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated at around 2 a.m. on Wednesday. That's according to Iranian media, who also say he was staying at a special residence for war veterans in North Tehran. Hamas called the strike a severe escalation that would not achieve its goals. A senior Hamas official claimed Israel was responsible, though Israel gave no immediate comment. Iran's Revolutionary Guards confirmed Haniyeh's death in Tehran, only hours after he attended a swearing-in ceremony for the country's new president. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas strongly condemned the killing of the Hamas leader in comments reported by Iran state media. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he was seeking to cool rising tensions in the region.
I don't think war is inevitable. I maintain that. I think there's always room and opportunities for diplomacy, and I'd like to see parties pursue those opportunities.
However, Austin also said the United States would help defend Israel if it were attacked. The news comes less than 24 hours after Israel claimed to have killed the Hezbollah commander it said was behind a deadly strike in the Israel-occupied Golan Heights, complicating chances for a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuhri told Reuters it is a grave escalation intended to undermine Hamas's resolve, adding that the group are confident of victory. Haniyeh, who is normally based in Qatar, has been the face of Hamas's international diplomacy as the war set off by the Hamas-led attack on Israel on October the 7th has raged in Gaza, where 3 of his sons were killed in an Israeli airstrike. Appointed as Hamas's leader in 2017, he often travelled between Turkey and Qatar for ceasefire talks or to talk to Hamas's ally Iran. The International Criminal Court Prosecutor Office requested an arrest warrant for him over alleged war crimes at the same time it issued a similar request against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right, so what about your thoughts on this issue? We'll get to Zenat Adam coming up in a moment, but you have your own opinions. I'm sure you can WhatsApp. In fact, you can tweet it out right away. Just use the hashtag #TheNationalPulse and then tag SFM Radio and myself. To WhatsApp, it's 0614 104 107. What is your understanding of what's happened regarding the killing of Ismail Haniyeh? That's point one. Do we know who's done it? I don't know whether upfront anybody has taken responsibility. There's lots of speculation. Very importantly, what does this mean for that hotbed of a region that is called the Middle East? All those thoughts. Let's hear your points of view right after this.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Explore the family drama and legacy of one of the most powerful royal families in South Africa, the Mukwebos. This is Mubango, 30 Years of Democracy, Season 1 and Season 2. See how it all began, from when a king suddenly dies, leaving behind 2 wives, one from a customary marriage and the other from a civil union, coming full circle to the coronation of one of his sons. Mubango Season 1 and Season 2, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. on SABC2. You belong.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we'll get your thoughts in a moment. Let's, however, get some analysis on this issue. With me, in the light of the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, is Zenat Adam, who's the Deputy Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Centre. Zenat, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. Up front, when you heard the news about the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, what is your knee-jerk response?
Well, the immediate response is that it is of concern that the head of the political bureau of Hamas, who is also the lead negotiator, or has been the lead negotiator over the hostage situation, has now been removed. And this creates quite a vacuum in terms of whether or not we can see a peaceful resolution to the situation in Gaza. By eliminating a leader of his stance and a leader who has been committed to those negotiations, from what we've heard through the mediation by Qatar, it certainly leaves the region at higher risk that the situation in the Middle East will escalate.
Okay, so second thing, the fact that he was killed in another country. By whoever, we'll get to the whoever just now, he was killed in another country. How significant is that?
Certainly, it opens up Iran for the questions on their security in securing a guest of his stature. He was there for the inauguration of President Masoud Pezeshkian, noting that Hamas does have close ties with Iran. But a number of other leaders were in Iran for the same ceremony. It also casts quite a question on the intelligence failure of Iran and how a person of the position of Ismail Haniyeh was able to have a precision strike on the residence where he was in Tehran. No such attempt seems to have been made on him whilst he has been residing in Qatar, and this was one occasion when he was out of Qatar, and the attack was quite precise. So the questions around the spyware that may have been used to identify where exactly he was and to conduct that kind of security breach of Iran. Iran has claimed that this has come from outside of its borders, and it will need to then respond in terms of its territorial integrity. But the details around the actual assassination are still scant.
Okay, so Iran hasn't responded to the security breach then? At this point in time?
Not as yet. They have said that the Republican Guards will be conducting an investigation into this and that further details will be coming. But there has been a statement by the Iranians saying that they will avenge Ismail Haniyeh's blood, and it is their task to do so because assassinating a guest on their lands is taken as a very serious violation.
Okay, now let's get to the second part. I can read tons of WhatsApp groups and social media posts. Everybody has their own stories about speculating as to who did it. So do we have a confirmation as to who has done it? Has anybody claimed responsibility?
There hasn't been a direct claim of responsibility, but there have been some statements coming from certain members of the Israeli security leadership, and there has also been a response in terms of Israel closing their airspace for 24 hours for fear of a reprisal attack. And I think if we look at it in the context of an attack in Beirut on Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr, still to be determined whether he has survived that attack or not, but that was within the same space of 12 hours. And the speculation, therefore, is that Israel is responsible for this and that there may have been operatives of Mossad in Iran that were collaborating with Israel. There's also speculation that there is U.S. complicity in terms of intelligence, and noting that Netanyahu had just come back from Washington. So there is an accusation from the Houthis in Yemen that perhaps Washington has given the green light to Netanyahu to escalate the situation in the region.
Well, you see, when as I listen to you, I'm just thinking speculation. How do we then move on from speculation in the absence of a formal statement by an organization wanting or being happy to claim responsibility? If we don't get that, how then do we then move on in terms of the story?
Well, obviously, you'd look at who stands to benefit from eliminating a person like Ismail Haniyeh, and it seems that there's only one particular enemy that comes to mind, and that's the reason why there is such speculation. There hasn't been a denial by Israel either. And also considering that just a few months ago, Israel extended an invitation to Iran to enter directly into the war by attacking their consulate in Syria and killing some of their officials there as well. And we noted at that stage that Iran showed quite a lot of restraint. There was a reprisal attack, but it was done so in a manner that would perhaps show a little bit of dignity to both sides and then immediately de-escalate. With this particular assassination, the questions remain as to whether there is room for de-escalation at this stage. Also taking into consideration, besides the Beirut attack, there was also a drone strike in Iraq within the same 12 hours. That is speculated to have been conducted by the United States. So overall, we're looking at a great deal of instability in the region. We've heard from countries such as Russia and China and a number of others condemning this attack. We have also heard from the Qatari Prime Minister indicating that political assassinations like this are counterintuitive, and continuous targeting of civilians in Gaza while the talks have been on actually works against the mediation efforts that they are undertaking, and that peace needs serious partners for a global stance that would be quite firm in terms of how these negotiations proceed. I think it's important to note this from the Qataris, and also note that Ismail Haniyeh will be buried in Qatar.
And I think that's going to happen on Friday. So I understand, right? So you're saying there's no official response from the Israeli government, right? Has there been an official response from Hamas?
Yes, they issued a statement early this morning, almost within an hour of the assassination and the news reaching the rest of the world. Their statement has been of course, indicating that Ismail Haniyeh was quite a strong leader, but also re-emphasizing that they have lost other leaders in the past, and certainly indicating somebody like Ahmed Yassin, Abdulaziz Rantisi. These are senior leaders of Hamas that were assassinated previously before Ismail Haniyeh rose to power. And the indication from the Hamas statement is that this assassination will not deter the resistance, but it may even embolden the resistance.
And what do you think? I mean, that's what they say. What do you think?
I think certainly this is going to have a massive impact on the regional developments. We're already looking at an absolutely devastated Gaza, but concurrently to that, we're looking at greater incursions into the West Bank and the growth of the Israeli settlements against international law, and that is a very serious violation. This week, we've seen reports of the massive sexual assaults on detainees in Palestine, and there have been protests coming from the Israelis themselves, and there's obviously a lot of dissension within Israel as to whether something like that should persist or whether it should not. There's also been internal political issues related to Netanyahu. And I've said this previously, perhaps on your show or perhaps on other shows on SAFM, and that is that war is favorable for Netanyahu at this stage because it extends his political career. And without that, he is facing jail. So Netanyahu's survival depends on the escalation of war in the region. And this certainly is something in his playbook.
Okay, just the last thing then before we wrap up. So with the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, no matter who's claimed or not claimed the responsibility at this point in time, will this escalate the move towards peace or escalate the move towards war? And I heard your last point already.
The concern is that this would escalate towards war, and that this is exactly what Israel is seeking, considering the kind of attacks that have happened in the 12 hours and the engagements with Hezbollah as well in terms of the strike in Beirut. This is worrying because it expands the war beyond Gaza. I think there will be certainly attempts by a number of international players, including China, Russia, and Qatar, possibly the United States, to try and de-escalate the situation. But there's a certain level of complicity by the United States. And so the questions around whether they are really honest in their negotiations will still arise.
And therefore, the big question that we don't really know is what will happen next. For now, Zinat Adam, thanks for your time. Zinat Adam, Deputy Executive Director at the Afro Middle East Centre. Much appreciate your insights. Let's get the news headlines now. Just go on 3:30. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, 2 suspects aged 22 and 28 have been arrested after 5 trucks were looted and another set alight during a protest in Atlantis on the west coast last night. KZN Premier Taminduli says the provincial government will conduct unannounced visits to provincial government departments and residents to ensure that the government is delivering services. And COSATU in the Western Cape is calling for a thorough investigation into the fate of 11 fishermen who went missing when their vessel sank in Hout Bay about 2 months ago. I'll be back with a full news update at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Solomon Mhlangu Drive westbound in Pretoria has a crash reported at Garsfontein Road, and the R21 southbound in Clayville has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions before Olifantsfontein Road, so expect delays and allow extra time for flight connections from the airport. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The M7 westbound has a truck crash reported at the N2 highway. The N2 southbound in Amanzimtoti has a crash reported on Twinney Hill, and Bayhead Road eastbound has truck congestion reported towards the Bluff. In Northwest, the N12 is where truck crash is reported between Wolmaranstad and Klerksdorp. The roadway is blocked and you're asked to expect delays. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Crombom Road, the M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
So to me, our very own Minister of Sport, I'm going to assume that you're only going to talk about the Olympic Games, but then I'm not always right, am I?
Yeah, we're going to start off with the MTN8. The prize money for this year's MTN8 tournament has been increased from 8 million rand to 10 million rand. Also, participating teams will now get 1 million rand instead of 800,000 rands. And the MTN8 gets underway on Saturday with the defending champions Orlando Pirates hosting SuperSport United at Orlando Stadium in Soweto at 6 p.m. Remember, Pirates have won the competition for the past 2 seasons, pocketing a cool 8 million rand for each campaign. Meanwhile, still staying with football, SuperSport United CEO Stan Matthews has explained the decision behind winger Keegan Dolly's failed move to the club. Dolly had completed a medical at the Tshwane outfit and was ready to put pen to paper, subject to personal terms, but the deal fell through, and Matthews says it was Coach Gavin Hunt's call.
I couldn't sign Vincent Pule and Keegan Dolly. So, that's Gavin's choice, and Gavin's best suited to answer that kind of question. My job is to support the coach, and he's worked with Vincent before. He feels that Vincent can play wide left, can play as a 10. Vincent knows his training, he knows his pressing, he knows what he wants from him. And I think Gavin was just maybe a little bit uncertain as to where Keegan is. We did do the medical, which was fine. But when it came down to a selection of A or B, that's the coach's call, and then I look to try and close up what he wants. And he wanted Vincent. So I told Vincent today, I tried to sign him 7 years ago. His numbers were greedy, so I'm glad that old age has opened his mind up to being at SuperSport finally. But he's a player we've always liked.
Still staying with football, just moving over to the Olympics. Zambia's women's national team coach Bruce Moabe believes that the Copper Queens can secure their first win at the 2024 Olympic Games against Germany tonight. Zambia lost their opening Group B game 3-0 against the United States before losing 6-5 to Australia, despite leading 5-2 at one point in the second half. So Zambia must win to have any chance of extending their Olympic adventure. Germany will go through with a win or a draw, and a loss will leave them needing results from others. So definitely Zambia will be looking to captain Barbara Banda, who scored a hat-trick in their loss against Australia, her third in 5 games, and will definitely be hoping that she can lead them to a win. We'll definitely look forward to watching that one this evening. Also looking forward to swimming this evening in the Olympics. Tatiana Smith and Kayleen Cobbett qualified for the 200-meter breaststroke semi-final. The duo finished first and second respectively in Heat 1, and the semis are tonight at 10:03. Peter Kutzer is also swimming tonight in the 200-meter backstroke semi-final, and that one is at 10:45. In rowing, Paige Badenhorst qualified for the women's single sculls final. That final is on Saturday at 9:30. And unfortunately in hockey, South Africa suffered their third straight defeat in the women's Pool B after narrowly going down 2-1 to Great Britain. They have 2 more matches to play, and we'll hope for some results over there. In boxing, heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk has pledged to pay prize money out of his own pocket if any Ukrainian boxer makes it to the podium. He is basically not mentioning what he's going to put out there, but there are 3 Ukrainian boxers competing in Paris, and Usyk has been doing his best to provide them support at the games. Anything's off with the motorsport. Williams team boss James Vowles says that he rates new signing Carlos Sainz as one of the top 4 drivers, if not at times the number 2 driver on the grid. The team announced on Monday that the Spaniard, who Ferrari chose to drop after the season, would join them from 2025. And according to Vowles, he feels that he was surprised that neither Mercedes nor Red Bull wanted Sainz next season. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I am Dumin Kapele.
Sure, listen, let me clear my throat. I had a chat with Zai yesterday and asked her, how many medals do you think we'll get? We've got 3 at the moment, right? We've
got 3 at the moment.
So what do you think?
Remember, I did say when you asked me when the Olympics started that I think, can we at least get to 10?
But you think we will? I mean, is that a wish list or you think a realistic chance?
I mean, it's a wish list. I don't see us going above 10 medals. Okay. So I'll say the most 8.
Okay, well.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know any better, so I'm telling you what I told her. I can't guess because I don't know. I haven't really done a complete study of it.
I mean, the best we've had is 10.
Ever?
Yeah. The best we've had at the Olympics is 10.
And last time was 3, right? The last one.
Last one was 3, and obviously we don't have our males and females football team there, not the...
Exactly. The football team, I think, would have better chance.
In terms of the football team.
So,
we hope
okay,
for the best.
I think here's the bottom line to it. For a country of South Africa's nature to only get 3 medals is not acceptable. There's something wrong with our, grassroots development.
Absolutely.
So we're wishing it's 10. I wish it's more, but 3 is not good enough.
Listen, let's hope that we get more from swimming. There's also track and field that's coming up. There's also the sculls. Let's just be...
Looking forward to track and field coming up, I think, by the weekend. Absolutely. Yes. Okay, more sport from you, track and field and others coming up in an hour's time.
What do you want from an insurer? Affordable premiums and awesome service when you claim, right? Here's what real clients say about Outsurance.
My name is Mpo. I'm 42 years old from Cape Town. I pay $495 per month for my Ford Figo 2014 with Outsurance Essential Cover.
SMS out to 30754 and see if you can save. But you also want to know your claim is going to be settled without any issues. Every year, the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance releases a report showing how the country's insurers did. And when it came to claims, of all the major insurers, Outsurance has had the fewest complaints referred by clients to the Ombudsman for the past decade. Now that's awesome claim service.
I'm not surprised Outsurance had such few complaints because in my experience with Outsurance, everything has been amazing.
Real savings, really happy clients. Go to outsurance.co.za right now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
The world's best cooking show is finally here. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, noma uphumaphi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. only on S3 Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, the world's best cooking show, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, I need to take your calls. I must take it. I'll certainly get your comments on those issues. Let's, however, talk about the Thabo Bester story. By the way, we'll get another take, an EFF position regarding the whole Miss South Africa row, right? So Thabo Bester's trial, the pre-trial hearing now been postponed to February the 10th of next year. The judge, Cagney Musi, adjourned the matter to allow lawyers to confirm their availability and trial dates, but what's interesting is that Bester himself seeking the court's intervention in what he says is unfair treatment by the Correctional Services Department. So what does that really mean? Let's get the thoughts of SABC News' reporter. That's Makhala Masiteng. Makhala, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we got a date, February 10th, right? And I understand that Bester not very happy. Tell me what is his issues? What is he raising?
Well, indeed, the matter is moved to the 10th of February, of course, for all of the accused. But now remember, the matter is being moved to that date to give Thabo Bester a chance for his matter to be ventilated in court. As you indicated in your intro, he's bringing two applications, the one of jurisdiction as well as where he's complaining about the conditions that he's talking about ill treatment at Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Center, where he says that will affect or impact on him having a fair trial. So now what happened is that the matter was postponed, then the other accused left, then we were only left now with Thabo Bester and his lawyer and the judge, trying of course to deal with the matter of the application, how far it has been. You'd remember last week I did mention that there was a concern that the application was not complete because he had not filed some of the papers and also he had not served all the interested parties with the papers. No, so today when we came in, now the issue was the fact that he did made the application and all the interested parties, including your Minister of Police, your Correctional Service Center, as well as the head of correctional services, I think, at Kgosi Mampuru, they have also responded, but now he has not replied back on that matter, because then the procedure will follow. They will have to file their heads of arguments after that. But what caused the heated debate sort of between the judge and advocate Lerato Muela was the issue of having Thabo Bester to come and always be in court when this matter is ventilated. But now the argument was that the application for jurisdiction is a civil matter, meaning Thabo Bester doesn't necessarily have to be in court when that matter is being dealt with before the court. But now the argument was that from the side of Thabo Bester, they wanted Thabo Bester to be in court when this matter is dealt with. But the judge was showing Advocate Muela that, but in your application, you are seeking the cost. So that indicates that this is a civil matter, because you can't be asking for cost and all of that if it was a criminal matter, because with criminal matters, it goes to a person being sentenced, a person being fined. But when it comes to the civil matters, that's where you will get a cost being allocated or given to a certain party. Maybe if you loses the case, then the other party, you will pay or the other party will pay. Right. So there was a heated debate there to an extent that Thabo Bester at some point he raised his hands actually several times, to an extent that he even said to the judge, can I address you? Then the judge said, no, you can't, because now you have a legal representative. That is the person who will represent you on this matter. He will speak on your behalf.
Okay, got that. Let's leave it at that. Makhala Masiteng, the SABC News reporter covering the Thabo Bester story. Now, just by the way, the Department of Correctional Services have issued a statement about an hour ago saying that there is, and I quote, no practice of solitary confinement in South Africa. And they therefore dismissed Bester's allegations that he was kept in that state as incorrect and fallacious. And that is a statement of an hour ago. You may want to comment on that. I see Brian Mabai saying, Good afternoon, Ashraf. I don't understand the entire Middle East, and I mean, they just, when they need assassinate someone, for example, in a soccer game, do they need to bomb the stadium? I really don't know what you're saying, Brian. It's just so lost in translation, so I can't read that out without just double checking exactly what you're saying. Let's talk about the Miss South Africa story that's just not going away. Right after this.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, in fact, there's a couple of voice notes on some of the issues that I raised as in the early part about, that's my point, about your being, South African. Forget the ID documents. Just what's your state of mind in terms of when you say, can you say clearly, I'm a South African, in terms of your commitment to nation building in this country? And I welcome your position on that, wherever you may be. Yes,
Ashraf, 100% what you are saying is the action that we do to contribute to better South Africa. I mean, look here, I work, I'm a taxpayer, and everything I'm doing is for the improvement of my own self and also for those fellow South Africans around me and involved and which I come across. So yes, I'm actively day in, day out doing what I can to add to this big puzzle. So yeah, the essence of being a South African is exactly that, doing your utmost all the time with everything that you have, whatever you can do to make the situation better. Yeah.
Okay, got that. Well, you and I are in absolute sync on that issue. It's a state of being. It's a commitment to wanting to build the country by your actions day to day, that in some way you can contribute to making this country better, right? Here's another based upon my initial comments.
Shalom Ashraf, that is wisdom. South Africa is a country as a land. Okay? So my belief that anyone that is in this land is a South African. Okay? Which is different from ethnicity. Okay? Everyone can be a South African. Whosoever live in this land is a South African. But inside in South Africa, there are different ethnicity. We got Afrikaners, we got Zulus, we got Xhosas, and so forth. So then not everyone can be a Xhosa or a Zulu or an Afrikaner. So that's when go according to the bloodline. That is the seed. No matter how much you can like to be a Zulu or Afrikaner, you cannot. But anyone who is in South Africa is a South African. Thank you. Bye.
Well, your name is Wisdom, and there's a reason why. So let's get this right. In terms of the legal documentation, I can't get involved in it. That, you need a South African, you need to be a South African citizen to be a South African. But for me, I agree with you in terms of attitude. If a person's even here for 5 years, let's say a medical doctor contributing to something in the country, maybe a professor, whatever, right? For the period of the 5 years he or she is here, then in my sense, that person is contributing to nation building in this country, and they don't need an ID document to prove that. I mean, that's just my thoughts on that issue, right? Okay, let's get on to another issue. In fact, what we'll do is we're gonna chat to Mbali Dlamini pretty shortly, but this is a concern. Car hijackings are on the increase in our country. So why is that the case? This is not people hijackings, but car hijackings, if you get the difference, right? John Vessel's with me, the data and actual science manager at Blink by My Way. John Vessels, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Thank you. So explain when you say car hijacking, just so that I'm sure about car hijackings versus people being hijacked while they're driving a car.
Yes, that's correct. So about a third of the time the vehicle is stolen, it's the result of a hijacking, and the other 2/3 is when the vehicle doesn't have any on it.
Okay, so use a specific focus here is on car hijackings of the actual cars. That's on the increase. That's interesting compared to, say, car theft, for example.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, I'll actually say that both are on the rise. It's not just car hijackings. And one of the reasons we've seen for it is that, a lot of these cars are now being targeted for parts. With some part shortages coming into the market, there's a big demand for those, and that has led to an increase in theft and hijackings in particular.
Okay, so give us some numbers when we say it's increased. I mean, you're comparing it to what?
Over the last few years. I don't have exact numbers, but according to our data, we have seen an increase in the last 2 years, and there's still a developing trend. so I can come back with better data in future.
Okay. So what do you think the purpose is? If they're hijacking cars as opposed to stealing cars, I mean, would the purposes be different in terms of what the needs are?
Yeah, it's interesting. And, hijacking a car is potentially a lot more risky for criminals. So it's interesting that they've resorted to that. I think one potential reason is that vehicles' security features have become a lot better, meaning that it's more difficult to steal them. And hijacking them where you can get the keys is perhaps an easier way to go. I think that's one potential reason. And another reason might just be that people are now being a lot more careful and have more security in parking lots and things like that.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add to this?
I think there's probably some good advice for people in terms of the times that vehicles are being hijacked. So about 60% of hijacks happen between 5 p.m. at midnight, and this is also when there tends to be less cars on the road, especially later on in the evening. So driving at that time, you do put yourself at more risk. And that tends to happen when vehicles aren't at home. So what we've seen in some reports is that even now at school events, vehicles are being targeted there. So it's very tricky to get away from.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's leave it at that. John Vestal, thanks for your time. Data and Actual Science Manager at Blink by My Way. What do you make of that? Car theft generally on the increase, car hijackings of the actual cars, I understand, could be used for parts as well, also on the increase. So there we are, huge concerns around that issue, right? We should be connecting to Mbali and Dlamini as soon as we can regarding the issue around Miss South Africa, the contender rather, and that's Chidima Vanessa Adet Sheena. But in the meantime, your take on any of the issues for you that moves the national pulse today. I mean, every day, different things moves the national pulse. So what's your pulse rate? What moves it? And keep in mind that you, as the driver of that, you play a very, very important role. So, by the way, pictures wherever you may be around the country with your dial locked into SAFM, send it off. You can WhatsApp to 0614 104 107. If you're tweeting it, that's great too. The National Pulse, and you can tag SAFM Radio as well as myself. Right, let's get some thoughts or comments rather. I think it's Landman on the line. Let's get Landman's thoughts. Hi,
Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you.
I'm from the Western Cape, Cape Town.
Good, welcome.
Thank you, Ashraf. I want to speak about being a South African. Now, this is going to be actually a little bit more, almost like controversial, but it's well in line with the topic. I am here as a foreigner. In fact, I haven't even got a document. I'm fighting on that one. But the thing is, I am serving the community where I am in the capacity of. I've been elected by this community. The community nominated me to serve on committees, street committees. I am the secretary of the Executive Farmers Committee. That's specifically because I've got my area, my field is a veterinary. I'm a part of it. Now, I have dedicated my life to upbringing or supporting the upcoming black farmers in South Africa, because I believe agriculture right now is also a main.
Okay, but can I push you just in terms of your comment about being a South African? What does it mean to you, and how do you explain that?
For me, being a South African is pretty much really about contributing to the society, to the community, and the whole nation. But ultimately, as a people, as a continent, as Africans, and basically because South Africa is within Africa. So that's the root. That's the basis of my. How I'm applying now my life.
Well, I'm glad that you do what you do. Landman, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. Let's get to further calls on this issue. And by the way, I really I think it's an important conversation, which is like, what is your state of being? So I'm not even worried about your ethnicity. Let's not even get into that. And I'm not even worried what your passport says. I'm saying to you, when you live in this country, what's your state of being around the greater issues, the calls to action from political parties, from the president, from everybody else around nation building? And what do you do in your day-to-day environment that contributes to nation building or, diminishes the nation-building cause, and therefore diminishes the cause of ensuring that we can ensure that the majority of people in our country are able to reach the maximum potential. I mean, that must be our wish list for everyone, isn't it? Bramoro in Bloom, hi.
Mr. Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, good talking to you as always. Go ahead. What's your point?
Yeah, thank you. My point is, can you please pose a question to the Miss Essay, the lady in question? What made her not requesting to be a South African citizen, i.e. naturalizing? What stopped her from doing that? Because anyone who is born in the country is not guaranteed a South African citizenship unless one of the parents is a South African. So she knew one parent is from Nigeria, the other is from probably Zimbabwe, Lesotho, etc. But she herself, after attaining 18, had the right to apply for full citizenship. If she fails to do that, the contest is Miss Essay, not Miss Africa. So it's only designed for only South Africans. I'm a Ghanaian. Yeah. I'm a Ghanaian by birth, a holder of Ghana passport. But this issue comes to affect me. If we want us to be labeled as Africans, then we need to take this debate to the AU and the Pan-African Parliament, whereas Africa decide that, okay, regardless of where you were born, you should be regarded as an African, being given one same African identity. If we are unable to do this, let's allow South Africans to protect their identity.
Okay.
Likewise, Ghanaians, Nigerians are.
Look, I think there's really two parts to that. I understand the issue about naturalized citizens. That I get all of that, right? But yes, I think all I'm saying is, if a person finally has been given a South African passport or South African citizenship, however they got it, I'm talking about legitimate, right? Then you don't question. Then it's done. That's it, right? Yeah. Now, whether they're good people, whether they carry a flag in their house or they don't carry a flag in their house, honestly, I can think of millions of other South Africans who don't carry a flag every day. That really doesn't matter. But Bramoro, thanks for that comment. I think the other issue, the broader point that Bramoro made about, whether we African. I mean, I hear that we all connected to the continent. I feel greatly about the need to play up what is African, but we must accept the fact that we don't always think as one. If that were the case, then in practical terms, even at the Olympic Games, you would have no nationalities. We as South Africa would be part of Africa. When we have the African Cup of Nations, we just won. We don't compete with anybody. We just won. Now, practically, that's just not going to happen. Now, the Minister of Sport, Art and Culture is Gayton McKenzie. He is back home from his trip to the Olympic Games, and he issued a comment speaking to the media earlier today regarding this very same issue about the Miss South Africa story.
I have to go and investigate. I can't just talk because I'm a minister. And if she's South African, we will wish her well. But if she's not South African, we can't have her represent us on the world stage. Where I am sitting now, I don't know. I am waiting for answers. But they say it's xenophobic when you ask the question. How can it be xenophobic? We must ask questions. My surname is Mackenzie. There's some people that ask me, you South African? Because my surname doesn't sound too South African. I don't get offended like, no. Why are you asking me that? We must start to listen to each other. We are being overrun here by illegal foreigners. Not, the emphasis on illegal. People on the ground are feeling the pain. I can't now because I'm a minister now. I must now stop talking about the problems. Illegal foreigners got all the jobs here. They're taking over everything. And it's a problem that we need to speak about in the restaurants. They're the only ones working.
Minister. But you see, the issue I have with that comment is this, right? The minister's saying the right thing about, I don't know, let's investigate it. Now, if for any reason that this candidate, this Miss South Africa candidate, Chidima Vanessa Adechina, is found not to have the proper documentation to be considered South African, then she'll be disqualified anyway. Then the question is not so much her, but what happens to the Miss South Africa organizers. That I understand. But so he said the right thing there. What I don't know is why would he then, in the same sentence, throw in other issues about illegal foreigners in the country? What I'm saying, why is he conflating the two? Just stick with the one issue and just say, let's find out what happens there. By automatically conflating it, you're bringing the two together, you're merging it, you are implying they're linked. But I'll say this as well. If for any reason her documentation proves that she's not South African, we don't have to have a conversation about it then. That's it. Then she will not be part of Miss South Africa. And Miss South Africa, the organizers, would have to answer some questions as well. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock.
Thanks, Ashraf. The top stories, arrests following the looting of 5 trucks, and the DRC and Rwanda agree to a ceasefire. A very good afternoon. 2 suspects aged 22 and 28 have been arrested after 5 trucks were looted and another set alight during a protest in Atlantis on the west coast last night. They face charges of public violence, malicious damage to property, and car theft. Police spokesperson Wesley Twigg says refrigerators were stolen from the trucks and police were pelted with stones.
Following investigation into the looting, the members recovered 4 refrigerators so far. Searches for other appliances and goods that were stolen are still underway. 2 suspects aged 22 and 28 were arrested and faces charges of public violence, malicious damage to property, and theft out of motor vehicle.
KZN Premier Tamin Dooley says the provincial government will conduct unannounced visits to provincial government departments and residents to ensure that the government is delivering services. Delivering his State of the Province address in the legislature in Pietermaritzburg, Dooley says his aim is to restore the people's confidence in the government. He says this will be done alongside rebuilding the economy after the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2021 unrest, and the 2022 floods. Gauteng Education MEC Matume Chilwane has blamed the latest alleged racial incidents at Pretoria Girls High on family backgrounds. He says he believes that such racial tendencies come from the accused learner's home environment. A disciplinary hearing into the conduct of the 12 pupils from the school has just been concluded. This follows a public outcry over alleged racially motivated complaints about black learners expressed through a WhatsApp group comprising white learners. The school principal has also been suspended. Chilwane says the government cannot be blamed for the learners' racial behavior.
These are kids, and we should firstly understand that they're children, and this type of behavior stems from somewhere, and definitely we are certain it's not from our schools. In most cases, that's from home or outside. And I'm happy that it's not all the kids. Those kids in the group, and fortunately there's those ones who are able to realize that these racial connotations and undertones are not going to assist going forward. So this behavior generally is from outside. I put squarely on the doorstep of parents. Parents need to do more to really educate these kids, because these are not children who were born in apartheid. These are children who are born in democracy. All they've ever known is a diversified, united nation.
COSATU in the Western Cape is calling for a thorough investigation into the fate of 11 fishermen who went missing when their vessel sank in Hout Bay about 2 months ago. The Union Federation picketed outside the offices of Sea Harvest in Cape Town, but left the memorandum of demands at their doorstep after the company refused to receive the document. There were 20 crew members aboard the vessel when it sank. 9 were rescued. COSATU's Malvin de Bruin says they are concerned about the safety of workers offshore.
We know that there's investigation, so we can't say at this stage that they are at fault, but we want the investigation to be conducted, it must be done thoroughly so that we can know what really happened on that sad day, and that we know if the company is at fault, that the full law must take its course. So we are waiting on that investigation report, and we will keep tabs on that particular issue.
And the DRC and Rwanda have agreed to a ceasefire to end violence in eastern Congo. The foreign ministers from both countries signed the deal after talks mediated by the Angolan president. It's due to come into effect on the 4th of August when a humanitarian truce between M23 rebels and government forces runs out. The BBC's Richard Hamilton has more.
The talks have been held in Luanda, in the Angolan capital, in the presidential palace, because they were mediated by President João Lourenço. They come as a humanitarian truce between the Congolese army and the rebel group, the M23, was due to expire on the 3rd of August. If it holds, this could be a massive deal. Rwanda in the past has denied supporting the M23, but the United Nations has, in a report, said that Kigali funded the group, and Rwandan forces have also been accused of operating inside the DR Congo alongside the rebels.
The top story at 4 o'clock, two suspects aged 22 and 28 have been arrested after 5 trucks were looted and another set alight during a protest in Atlantis on the west coast last night. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemele.
In sports this hour, Jamaican sprinter Jackson drops 100-meter from Paris program and box all set for Aussie's tour. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N12 eastbound in Germiston has a crash reported after Edenvale Road exit, and the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Boysons Road. In KZN, the N2 southbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, the M7 westbound has a truck crash reported at the N2 highway, and Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park. In the northwest, the N12 has a truck crash reported between Wolbenrandstad and Klerksdorp. The roadway is blocked and you're asked to expect delays. The M5 southbound in Cape Town is slow moving towards Racecourse Road. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound slow moving towards Hospital Bend. Stellenbosch Arterial Road eastbound is slow moving at Noyensfontein Road, and Okavango Road in Brackenfell is slow moving at the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends. You need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, here's a thought, I love our flag, the South African flag, and I think it's just magic, okay? But I understand every country loves their flag, but I just think ours is just so wonderfully colorful, right? And of course, when the flag is raised at a sporting event or even at an inauguration, and again, it is a powerful symbol of what the country represents. I think the national anthem is another one, right? But yeah, when I will stay with the flag issue, I'm just wondering, I don't know the history. Which was the first country to institute a flag as a symbol of what that country stands for, and what did countries do before that? So like you go to an event that you want to reflect your patriotism, you use your flag or your national anthem. Those are the two most obvious ones. So what did countries do before that, before they had a flag to wave? Well, I'll tell you what, if you know the answer, and this is not a trick question, this is a serious question because I don't know the answer myself, okay? You can certainly tell me, and you can WhatsApp 0614 104 107, tweet it out, hashtag the National Pulse, tag SAFM Radio, tag me, Ashraf Garda. Great if you do that. By the way, while you're doing the tagging, as always, let me just throw it out. Wherever you are listening from, just let me know. And if you are locked in with that dial locked into SFM and you take a picture, as many of you do every day, send it off. I'd love to see it. Really great that you do just that. Okay, we will continue talking about some of the issues and some of the points that I brought up earlier on about your state of being South African. What is it for you? How do you express it that you are South African? Let's talk about procurement. It's a big, big issue in our country, and it's dominated our lives with regards to the issues of corruption and many other things all related to that. Now, you also know that the president, Ramaphosa, that is, well, he signed a whole lot of bills into law a few days ago. One of them, the Public Procurement Act, right? So that bill was then signed. Now, many people hail it as an important tool now that will effectively clamp down on rampant corruption. That's what many people think. However, there are others who think otherwise. Amongst them, the Western Cape Premier Alan Winde, as well as the finance MEC in that region, that's Deirdre Bartman, has raised some serious concerns over the constitutionality of the Act. In fact, they call it a handbrake for service delivery. Okay, let's find out what that really means. Deirdre Bartman with me, the Western Cape MEC for Finance. Appreciate your time, MEC. Let's talk about just that firstly. A handbrake for service delivery. What does that mean?
Thank you, Ashraf, and thank you for having me on the show. So obviously we have constitutional concerns, and separate to the constitutional concerns, we have some concerns regarding the substantive content of the bill. I'll probably, just for the handbrake part, I'll maybe deal with the substantive issues first before I get to some of the constitutional matters. In layman's terms, because it's a very technical bill, so I know some people, we kind of fall over our fancy legal English sometimes. Mm-hmm. So procurement is essentially everything that government buys, sells, and builds on behalf of residents. And first and foremost, that needs to be based on value for money, because we are working with the people's money. And the people's money, if you look in auditing terms, have to be spent efficiently, effectively, and economically. Preferential procurement is when government wants to include secondary values or goals that it wants to achieve over and above that value for money concept. And in the Constitution, there are actual clauses that procurement stems from. And one of the clauses that preferential procurement stem from is a discretionary matter. Despite it being a discretionary matter, there are types of preference that could be allowed, but it doesn't necessarily have to be BBBE or set-asides. It could be preference for building more schools and hospitals or achieving climate change goals. It could be setting preferences for energy security or innovation or developing SMMEs. Because as South Africans, we need to start getting our priorities straight. Instead of busy fighting on terms of which tenderpreneur is going to be able to eat more in terms of preferential procurement, we need to be able to ask ourselves, why are middle and lower income families struggling to put food on the table? And I think the public procurement bill completely gets it wrong in terms of what South Africa's priorities needs to be.
So why does it get it wrong? I mean, just answer that. So if we understand, unless we talk about remodeling the whole concept of procurement, and procurement, as you quite rightly have said, is the way government spends its money, right? The way they pay for services. There's a certain policy and rule around that, right? Why do you think they've got it wrong then?
I'll give you one example, and then I'll deal with the centralization right after that as well. It is my view that the spirit of the constitutional provisions is to permit preferential procurement as a mechanism to address the impact of apartheid through empowerment without excluding any person or group from participating in the economic opportunities in our country. Now, set-aside specifically have been previously said to be invalid in terms of the 2017 regulations, and that was part of a previous court case. It was a constitutional court case. It was called Minister of Finance, the national one, versus Agribusiness. And the Constitutional Court actually invalidated those 2017 preferential procurement regulations, which included set-asides and subcontracting, because it was completely excluding persons and groups from participating in economic opportunities. This means that you're not just getting a hand up or a hand down. You're completely excluding persons and groups. Now, the second part of this bill, which is the main reason why we are objecting to this bill, is regarding the constitutionality. And when I say that, it's regarding the centralization and the autonomy of provinces and municipalities. Now, in this bill, when you read it, there's a golden thread of centralization. One of the examples is National Treasury wants to exempt procuring organs of state from exempt procuring institutions from developing our own procurement systems, so essentially wanting to give us permission. But we don't need an exemption from National Treasury. The Constitution already empowers us to develop our own systems, which was also confirmed in court cases previously, particularly the one I mentioned. The other chapter, which is Chapter 4, which deals with the preferential procurement that I mentioned, instead of putting a framework in place, when you look at how the clauses are written, the set-asides, the subcontract and stuff, it's not a framework. National Treasury is attempting to write policy on behalf of organs of state, which the court already said you are not allowed to do. Not only is National Treasury not allowed to do it, you cannot even legislate writing policy for us, because that is our job in terms of the Constitution. The Constitution uses the word organs of state in a national, provincial and local level. It's in section 217 for the bit of a book nerds, those who want to go check up on those. And then in the Minister of Finance versus Agribusiness Constitutional Court case, it was confirmed that National Treasury actually cannot write preferential procurement policy.
So I hear you. So in the light of that, are we suggesting that the president and those who put together that bill didn't know what you were just saying now? That's point one. And point two, then what, considering your opposition to it, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it?
Okay. So I cannot speculate whether they knew about it or did not know about it, but the court case was concluded and there was a judgment before this bill. So I cannot imagine that National Treasury and the President did not read the court case before this particular bill. That's the first part. What we have done so far, other than the extensive technical comments that Provincial Treasury and the Western Cape government submitted on this bill in the various stages during it going through Parliament, myself and the Premier wrote to the President. We requested that this bill not be implemented, that he waits and consults provinces and municipalities on the way forward in order to resolve the constitutional matters first. To my knowledge, I've not seen a response from the President's office yet. I don't think anything has landed on my desk yet. But if we're not going to get a response, we will have to start considering legal action in this regard.
Okay, and that obviously would be well drawn out, right? But let's just end with the most important issue, right? If this bill is not in the current form, right, how would you, if you could craft it, how would you recraft it? Considering you want to do two things. You want accountability. You want to ensure that procurement is done fairly, but you also want to ensure that there are no handbrakes for service delivery, to quote what was said earlier on, and therefore that the move towards escalating service delivery and getting things done well will be escalated at full speed.
Well, I'm starting to think back on my full master's topic. But one thing that I would love to have seen in this bill is how do we procure for innovation? And when I say innovation, it means if we have an energy security problem, how do you procure for that? If we are struggling to build schools on a faster, on time, and for it to stand and within budget, how do we do that better? If we have a nutrition problem in our province, what are the strategic sourcing interventions that we can do? How do we put a framework in place in order for organs of state to be able to say, these are the social and economic issues that we would like to tackle within our respective procurement policy? Because what National Treasury can do is put a framework in place, but they cannot be writing policy matter for us. And we certainly cannot be delegating policy writing to the National Minister of Finance as well as the Public Procurement Office. And when you look at this particular bill, there are various points in the bill where it's the Minister will write the regulations or the Public Procurement Office at National Treasury will decide. And we cannot be delegating that legislative authority to make this framework away to them. What is the point then of having parliaments?
Here's the last thing. I mean, we're dealing with interesting nuances right now because the Western Cape government is run by a majority party, but that's not the case for many other parties in the country and many other provinces rather. And now we know we have a government of national unity. To what degree is the GNU helping your cause in terms of what you're trying to do or hindering it?
Well, in terms of engagement in the GNU, I think I have good relations with my counterparts, irrespective of political party, in the respective portfolio. I've had engagements with the Minister of Finance in KZN. I've had engagement with the National Minister of Finance. I've had engagements with the Deputy Minister of Finance nationally as well. So I do consider the National Treasury and Provincial Treasury relationship to date has been very constructive even before the GNU. What is concerning, however, is that National Treasury and the presidency has allowed this bill to go through, and that the president has signed this into an act.
Yeah.
And perhaps the reason it didn't get as much coverage previously is because it was signed on the same day as some legislation or some bills that one would laud, such as matters in climate change. So maybe that's the reason that we didn't get as much coverage and spoke about it as much before. But there are certain things the way we have to draw the line, and constitutional matters, rule of law, autonomy of provinces and local municipalities as it is set out in the Constitution really are those things that are worth fighting for, because the people of our provinces, it's not just the Western Cape, the people of all of our provinces, they are worth fighting for to make sure that their autonomy is protected.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. I'll tell you what, we certainly need to get another side of the story, Deirdre Bartman, but thank you for sharing your insights on behalf of the region that you represent, the Western Cape. You are the MEC for Finance there. Much appreciate your time. Now, to the general audience, I mean, you're listening, and this is the National Pulse. So what for you are the issues that move the National Pulse today? What do you make of this conversation around procurement? It is such a big deal issue in this country, you know that. So the Western Cape clearly not happy with it. What do you feel? How would you change it? We know that bill was signed off a week ago, isn't it? But if you have an opinion on this thing, I'd like to know. You can also WhatsApp us right away, 0614 104 107 in text or voice note form. Tweet it out, or you can call in as well. I'll take your calls in a moment.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so all around the country we go. Hassan Lorgan's got a comment. Hassan, go ahead. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Ashraf, my concern with the Minister of Sport, Art and Culture is, as I feared in a very early conversation with the station, I feared that it will be all about sport. But although, of course, in his short tenure, he's managed to divulge the private information of those who benefited from COVID, he's managed to attack a South African, bona fide South African, questioning her nationality. He has attacked the deputy minister for supporting Palestine and asking for a ceasefire in line with the government's position. I really think he should be in the studio to point out what is his agenda for the department, because clearly we need to have people reading, we need to have books, we need to discuss a lot more. And I always feared, as much as I love sport, I love books and I love other things, I don't want sport to squeeze out art and culture, which often happens.
Well, I think point well taken. In fact, we've put through an invite for him to be here. It's a case of when. And, with many of these ministers are in the same boat. If, what, when, maybe. But in principle, absolutely. Short-form conversation, long-form conversation, both are important. Hassan, your point is well noted there. Let's move on. Willie in Kuma, hi. Willie, hello, you're live. Go ahead.
Yes, look, Ashraf, let me express my concern just before I get to my original point. You see, Ashraf, please, man, I know I did complain a little bit, but now try your best, Ashraf, to read or to play our voice notes as regular as possible, as many times as possible, so that at least, sometimes you put in your voice notes for 3 consecutive days without being played, Ashraf. So now your guy who was standing for you a day before yesterday, John Ferrica, he would play them as regular. I know you've got programs to complete this and this and this and this, But try your best, because this is the part. We pay for this voice note.
All right, Willie, I mean, I hear you, right? Let me tell you, there isn't a meeting that we have as a production team, right? And I'm talking about Rosani, Keys, and Temba and myself, that we don't try and look at the balancing act and managing our service delivery of this show and what it means as the National Pulse to give people the content that they need to listen to the show every day, fresh, brand new content with the right speakers, right? At the same time, we are well aware that the bigger audience are the people listening, and we also have to reflect what the listeners feel when they call or WhatsApp. So you are obviously one of them. And it is very difficult always, particularly in a drive time show, to get the balance right, where you have other shows with longer spaces allowed for longer talks, right? We obviously don't. It's a different type of show, right? So what I'm saying to you, I hear you. And I sympathize. I don't have the right answer. So I can't tell you tomorrow we can double it immediately. But I can tell you now we are very aware of the need that when people WhatsApp or call in, that we must try our best to try and address it and play it as much as we can. I hear that. Okay, Willie? I hope that, but I don't have a perfect answer right now. I really don't.
That's right. Yes. Lastly and very shortly, my point is only to the response actually of the sports minister. What I'm saying is that I go for the sentiments of sports minister 100% impact. Beyond that, you see, not only on sports, beyond that, across the labor department in as far as the foreigners are concerned, as South Africans here. So in regard to the girl participating there, the mother being a Mozambican and the father being a Nigerian, it's natural that we have to question that, because we've got our own people here. Some people begin at home first. We've got our people who can compete, who can do this and this and this and this and this.
Okay,
so that's why you are in order when you are saying, when we complain, you say we are xenophobic. When you complain about our foreign nationals who are treating us not well at all, coming to the drugs, coming to criminality, we see them, we live with them here.
Let me, Willie, I'm going to stop you only because I need to play another voice note, if you get my point, okay? I want to give somebody else a chance to. I think you've made your point. I hear you. Thank you for that. And I hope we can address the issues of enough callers and increase the callers and increase the voice notes, but at the same time, ensuring that we have as many quality interviews that ultimately drives the National Pulse, and we flight it on air every single day, right? So let's get to some of those voice notes as we can right now. Let me just see. So here's another one on... so Sipho Sitoli says maybe a South African citizen and not necessarily a South African. I'm going to hear that one there. Brian saying when the French team won the World Cup in 2018, we never had the national team say Africa has done it. Okay, got that from Brian. And here's another thought on the Gayton issue.
Hi, Ashraf. I understand the way the minister has commented, Minister McKenzie, because he understands the level of understanding of society regarding foreigners. So when you address this issue, it is important to also clarify or touch on the other issues so that this one issue that we're dealing with is clear to society, because our understanding of issues and differentiation of issues is not the same. And unfortunately, a bigger part of our society doesn't know the difference. So whenever you're touching one aspect of foreign nationals, when anything that has to touch foreigners, you need to touch the ground completely so that people can be able to understand the difference and thus react accordingly.
Okay, I hear you. All I'm saying is I don't think it should be done in the same sentence. But I mean, maybe we're wrong. We all have different ways of interpreting it, and I respectfully hear what you're saying. Maybe you got a point. I differ, but that's why we have the show. Different opinions, right? Here's another one on service delivery.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Interesting listening to this procurement bill. But this is something that is typical of the ANC. They're in a government of national unity, or working together with other parties. But behind the scenes, there's skullduggery and things they do that lead people not to trust them. I mean, they did exactly the same with the NHI, where They want to issue the certificates where a doctor can practice or a hospital can be or a pharmacy and everything. So this is the way they actually try and manipulate and be a dictator state while under the guise of a democracy. So, you know what? They need to be pointed out and they needed to be taken to task. Cyril and the ANC are not doing what they should be doing for this country. Mark from Cape Town.
Mark, I got that. We're on to news time. I'll just say this much. I mean, they do have certain leeway as historically the majority party up till May 29, and they're still the party with the most votes, so they have the most clout, even now, within the government of national unity. I'm not talking about the merits of what you say. I'm talking about the ability to make decisions, and I think we do have to respect that part. 4:30, here's Madupi with the news headlines.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. In your headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the Police Investigative Directorate Amendment Bill into law. 2 suspects aged 22 and 28 have been arrested after 5 trucks were looted and another one set alight during a protest in Atlantis on the west coast last night. And Ukraine's military says Russia launched one of its biggest attacks using explosive drones overnight. And those are your headlines. A full news update, 5 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Alexandra has a crash reported before London Road. In KZN, the M7 westbound has a truck crash reported at the N2 highway, and Bayard Road eastbound has truck congestion reported towards the Bluff. In Northwest, on the N12, a truck crash reported between Wolmaranstad and Klerksdorp. The roadway has been blocked and you're asked to expect delays. In Cape Town, Marine Drive northbound in Milnerton is queuing towards Racecourse Road, and Liesbeek Parkway outbound in Observatory is slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, so we had the Olympic, we had the MTN 8s topping the bill in the first half, but the Olympics are back with a bang.
They are. We start things off with athletics this hour, where Jamaica's 2-time 200 meters world champion Shericka Jackson has pulled out of the women's 100-meter event at the Paris Olympics. Jackson's fitness has been quite a concern since the 9th of July, where she was competing in Hungary, where she had her knee taped after competing there and was limping off the track. Now, she'll be replaced by Shashali Forbes, and there's still uncertainty on if Jackson will compete in the 200 meter. It's quite unfortunate because I was looking forward to seeing how she's going to line up against the likes of Shelley and Fraser Price, Shakari Richardson of USA, and Elaine Thompson, amongst others. So we'll get to see if she will compete in the 200 meter or not. But those preliminary rounds of the women's 100 meter at the Paris Games start on Friday, with the semi-finals and final on Saturday. Staying with the Olympics, Court of Arbitration of Sport has dismissed Canada's appeal of a 6-point deduction over a spying scandal at the women's Olympic football. Now, basically, staff from Canada used a drone to spy on New Zealand training session ahead of their match, and then they were punished with a 6-point deduction by FIFA, and they took it to the Swiss-based body, and they have upheld that 6-point deduction. Actually, Canada are in action today. They won both their matches so far against New Zealand and France, but with this penalty, they have 0 points with a game remaining, so they need to win against Colombia today if they are to go through to the quarterfinals. In cycling, Team South Africa's BMX freestyle rider Vincent Legoni says that he's proud of his Olympic Games debut performance despite finishing last today. Legoni was the opening act in run 1 with a score of 73.20 behind Croatian rider Marin Reigns at 85.19. And Legoni says that the competition was tight and he was made to pay for his mistakes.
If that's not an incentive, then
All right, then let's move on to football action. SuperSport United coach Gavin Hunt says that he's desperate to win their MTN 8 clash against Orlando Pirates this weekend to avoid a 7-week break. With the start of the Betway Premiership scheduled for mid-September, it means should the Tshwane side get eliminated, they only return to action in 6 weeks' time for the league opener against Mamelodi Sundowns. And Hunt says he wants to avoid the lengthy pause.
If that's not an incentive, then I don't know. At least Pirates play in Africa, I think. So yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, I haven't even thought about it. I'll think about it at 8:30 on Saturday night. But I've got an idea, So yeah, it is what it is. I'm not quite sure. Obviously, with a new sponsor coming on board, obviously there's a lot of logistic things they have to do. I think behind the scenes, boards and what. So it's a long way away. The league. And we've been going 5 weeks now, So it's you want to, but obviously we're very lucky to have a sponsor come in. But I mean, as a football perspective, it's a bit. We're gonna have to. Well, we'll see what happens.
Staying with football, the SA Football Association's head of referees, Abdul Ibrahim, says that there's good progress towards the implementation of VAR in the Premier Division. Over the past week, we've heard from SAFA President Danny Jordan and PSL Chairman Irvin Khoza just speaking about the delays behind VAR's introduction in SA football. But Ibrahim says that there will be some positive developments in the next 2 weeks.
We, the referees committee, the referees department, have provided a budget with regards to the training of the extensive training of match officials. We were advised in a joint liaison meeting that a subcommittee needs to be formed. The subcommittee has been formed. We are hoping to finalize a date over the next week or two to actually sit and map the way forward. Ultimately, when the meetings are done, we then present, the committee will present a report to the president, Dr. Jordan, as well as the chairperson of the league, Dr. Khoza, so that ultimately they can make the final decision based on the recommendations that are made from the subcommittee. That is where we currently sit at the moment.
All right, then earlier on I was trying to play the clip by SA cyclist Legoni, who was saying that he was paying mistakes, or he was paying for the mistakes that he made today. I'll play that one in the next hour. However, in terms of the Olympics, Novak Djokovic, he beat Dominic Kupfer 7-5, 6-3 to advance to the quarterfinals of the Paris Olympics, and he next faces Stefanos Tsitsipas in the last 8. And the great news for Tsitsipas is that he's the first Greek to reach the quarterfinals since 1988. Definitely looking forward to that one. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
Nothing beats the feeling of relaxing on your couch after a long, hard day, getting rid of those work clothes and feeling the freedom of being in your PJs. Throwing off that lace front, undoing your hair, that makeup, voila, gone. It's going to be a quiet, relaxed night. Well, not on S3. Bring a whole lot of vroom to your weeknights with Top Gear Season 16. Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. and Top Gear specials such as Top Gear from A to Z and Top Gear The Races. Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. Channel your inner vroom with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, let's get to the markets with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Good chatting to you as always. So we've got two issues about local and global markets. Before that, this important news around Woolworths.
Definitely an afternoon to you and to your listeners. And this trading update is not directly comparable to the previous year as the guys sold David Jones operations in Australia, but the group turnover and sales from continuing operations up 6.2%, Ashraf. And in South Africa, the disruptions caused by load shedding and ports issues eased in the last quarter, but weak consumer confidence continued to weigh on discretionary spending, and their food business delivered strong and above market growth. notwithstanding the impact of taxi strikes and avian flu, and the fashion, beauty and home business impacted by poor availability and increased competition from the disruptive entry of international online retailers, and they expect profits from continuing operations to decrease by 19%. And we have seen the Bank of Japan raised interest rates by 25 basis points and plan to halve their bond buying, and that underscores their determination to normalize monetary policy, and that is happening hours before the U.S. Central Bank decision, where expectations are we're going to get a signal of potential rate cuts in September, and China's manufacturing activity contracted for a third month in a row, pointing to a grinding second half for the world's production powerhouse. Locally, total number of liquidations decreased by 5.5% in June compared to June 2023, and oil prices bounced back from the 7-week lows at the back of escalating Middle East tension, which overshadowed concerns about weak China demand. Brent crude up 1.7% at $80, and safe haven demand plus interest rate cut expectations are helping the yellow metal to continue to shine. And as it is, gold itself is up 0.7% at 2,428. Platinum is up 1.7% at 977. DAX foods are all up, including the CAC. The Dow up 0.3%, S&P up 1.5%, the JC is up a whopping 1.7%. Heavy lifting done by resources up 4.5%, financials up 1.3%, industrials up 1%. The rand strengthened is 18.19 against the US dollar, 23.35 against the pound, and 19.72 against the euro.
Right, so that's it for now. So we will have, we'll talk to you tomorrow, and more markets coming up in an hour. Thanks for that, Mark Webb. We'll take more thoughts, more calls, and some of the big issues that you've raised. We'll do it right after this.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
In fact, we've got some interesting thoughts. First of all, just one person who sent a message: if my country in the world can bypass their own laws or not when it comes to citizenship. I want to read your WhatsApp, but it's just too long. I really can't, and I really don't get it. Please it probably works better. Just give me your name and a one-liner. We'll certainly do that. Here's one on the flag origin. I asked a question because I don't know. I said, do you know which is the first country in the world that used a flag to represent and reflect their country? And if you know, let me know. And then, what did we do beforehand? I know a lot has happened in the last 100 years in the world, but what did people do before to reflect a flag? So here's one from Lee Jarvis in Durban. Lee, thanks for the message, because I like that sort of interaction. It's important. Saying the first known use of flags to represent a country dates back to ancient China or India, or rather India. In China, during the Zhou dynasty, approximately 1046 to 256 BC, the flags were used for military and ceremonial purposes. Similarly, in ancient India, flags were used to represent kingdoms and empires. These early flags typically featured symbols and colors significant to the ruling authority or culture. Well, I have that, right? And I wonder in the modern world what's happened next. Certainly, of course, we know that many countries or tribes historically have always had a type of flag. And here's the other one. Who invented this idea of a white flag as a flag of surrender? I just wonder on that issue, right? Okay, further comments we've got, we'll pick up in terms of WhatsApp voice notes. Here's another thought on the procurement story.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the SAFM listeners. In the matter of this Procurement Act, I think that the Western Cape is trying to have their own policies and rules as a Western Cape. We cannot have that. No, that we cannot have, because South Africa is a republic. There are no federal states, so they cannot be autonomous from South Africa. So they must be governed by this act, just like each and every square inch of this republic. And we want to address the imbalances of the past. Thank you.
Okay, just another one on the. Thank you for that. I mean, I hear you. That's why it's complicated, because the Western Cape believes there are grey areas, and that's what they're arguing about, right? Lucanio in Tabeja saying, Ashraf, for the Miss South Africa participants' predicament, we need a clear understanding of the white paper on citizenship, immigration, and refugee protection. And this is exciting for me to look into this for better understanding. Okay, so there you are. Maybe we've learned something, or we're going to all learn something indeed, right? Let's get into another take on this issue. I have to tell you, we've put this invite out to Stephanie Vale, who's the head of Miss South Africa, the organizing committee, and they're not commenting at this point in time. I wish they do, because I think we need to know that. And I do think we need to get absolute clarity from Home Affairs in terms of exactly that point that you brought up, like what's allowed, what's not allowed. This has nothing to do with the competency of the person, okay, which is separate. Let's get the thoughts, however, of an EFF MP. We have Imbali Dlamini on hold there. Imbali, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you. Right. So, is it you or your party? You have a position on this issue regarding the South African, who many people believe is not South African enough?
Sure, we absolutely do. As you know, the EFF is centers its politics around Africa and uniting Africa, but also the African identity and how important it is to withhold it. And there's no way of gauging what makes a person more African than the other. As long as you come from the continent, we recognize you as an African. And now in this particular instance, there's a whole lot of victimization and bullying that is happening, and also taking away from the other contestants who are in the competition, because now we have centered the competition around one person in citizenship, and we believe in the competency of Miss South Africa, which has been a pageant that has been running over for years. And it's taking a shape that says, look, there was an apartheid era. There was a time when Miss South Africa went and had all previous Miss South Africas. And you could tell from a certain period, there was an era where it was only white women who were winning Miss South Africa. And then we moved into the democratic dispensation. And we saw black women winning. We saw Indian women. So women of all sorts of color and descent. And that's really what the country stands for as well. And if you look at the content and what we're consuming as well on television, I'll make an example with the Mummy Club. We have a lady called Miss Manche, who's married to a Nigerian man, who's got Nigerian kids. We've got a reality TV show as well that gives South African women specifically to go and date with Nigerian men. And we don't think the issue is the fact that her parents are not South African. The issue is the fact that there's a prejudice that is attached to the Nigerian nationality, and we all have some sort of assumptions. Once a person say and declare themselves as Nigerian, there's an assumption that is attached to it, which is incorrect, which we need to fight off as well, because you can't make off and have a conclusion about an individual based on nationality. But in the deep core of it is the issue of colorism, because we've seen so many people represent countries everywhere. But we also feel like what comes at this is the color of her skin. She's a tone darker, and she would have been more palatable had her shade been lighter. Because we have seen that the patriarchal system has a formula with how women should look and how women should be appealing. And in the center of it, beyond Afrophobia, beyond the Nigerian descent, is also the fact of the color of her skin, and she's bullied.
But let me come in. I mean, you see, I'm looking at the color of the skin issue, and we don't know that as a fact. I mean, I hear what you're saying. We don't know that's the reason, because the majority of people who are complaining about it, in fact, would have the same skin tone as her, if you really want us to go down that line. I understand the issues of perception and conscious and unconscious bias. I understand that's a broader conversation, right? But the gist of the conversation is this, has she been cleared as being a South African? I'm not too worried about the maneuvers about how finally they got citizenship. Right?
But Miss South Africa responded.
Yes, I know they have.
Yes, said she filled in the criteria. She's eligible. That's why she got into the top 12. They did their due diligence. I don't know where the sense of that we need to do a vetting process outside of, because like I've been saying, the pageant has been running for years. They have a particular criteria that they are using. Why do we second guess it now? Because there's a black Nigerian girl in the center of it.
Well, I think why we're doing it now, when I say we, is not me. There are people.
No, absolutely.
There are people clearly who are drumming up support for whatever reason, and they feel they want to make a point of her. Now, I completely agree with you. When once the person's cleared, the person's cleared. Unless, and this is a big unless Miss South Africa organizers, they claim that the person's cleared, but the person's not cleared. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying unless that's what happened. They claim the person's cleared, but for some reason the person is not. And the only people who can give us an absolute answer on this would be Home Affairs, who are not actually talking directly about this issue right now, right? So that ultimately would be the issue, don't you think so? That if the person's eligible to be a South African citizen, that's the end of the conversation. Now, having said that, maybe the last thing to you, right? How do you turn this around where people almost, debating the grades of her South Africanness? Some people have 100% South African blood, others have only 80%. And they don't even want paper. They're disappointed about that part to say she must represent Nigeria or Mozambique. And that could apply to many of us because hardly anybody from South Africa are really from South Africa, if you know what I'm saying.
So this wouldn't be the first time that this happens with Miss South Africa in particular. We go as far back as Vanessa in 2001, who has a Portuguese and Angolan descent. There was Lalela back in 2014, who has parents who were diplomats in Eswatini. It's definitely not the first time that this has happened. It's the first time that it has received the amount of outrage that it has. And the only reason we can draw it to is because there's a stigma attached to where her father comes from. And that's where the rage is coming from. And she's being victimized in the process.
Well, clearly somebody is drumming up those xenophobic attacks, if you want to call it just that, right?
Sure.
Bali, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I mean, I think, and just the final thought on that for today, again, if for any reason that the person's found not to have a correct South African ID, that's a different conversation. Other than that, really, whether she carries a flag or not, she's South African if she's got citizenship.
Attention ladies, join us on Saturday, August 17th, 2024 for the Star Choice is Yours Women's Day event at Altitude Fourways, a day dedicated to empowerment, inspiration and transformation. Engage with dynamic speakers, attend interactive conversations and connect with amazing women just like you. The event will be hosted by the fabulous Unatingai. Don't miss out on this opportunity to celebrate and elevate yourself. Get your tickets now at www.quicket.co.za for 550 Rand, drinks, food and a gift bag included. Plus, stand a chance to win an honor product. This incredible event is powered by independent media and the Honor 200 series.
Explore the family drama and legacy of one of the most powerful royal families in South Africa, the Mukwebos. This is Mubango, 30 Years of Democracy, Season 1 and Season 2. See how it all began, from when a king suddenly dies, leaving behind two wives, one from a customary marriage and the other from a civil union, coming full circle to the coronation of one of his sons. Mubango Season 1 and Season 2, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. on SABC2. You belong.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So, I see here's one comment from Fendi saying, Ashraf, on today's show, earlier with Kathy's show, the Minister of Health, former Minister of Health, I should say, Aaron Matsoaledi, explained that the young girl does not belong to South Africa. She's either from Nigeria or Mozambique. I don't think he actually said that. We're going to actually play the sound just now. I think what he said is a person is, there's this concept of a person, one of the two people has to be South African for a person to be South African, or they need to be a naturalized citizen. That means a person, one or both, don't have to be South Africans initially, born here, but over a period they become South Africans. So that happens to many people. Then that child or that person would be South African. That's possible. But I'll tell you what, don't take my word for it. We're going to play his sound bites, the sound clip of Aaron Matsoaledi coming up later on. Right. Let's get into another issue that, one of the things that we want to do on the show is sort of play up the issue of artificial intelligence and tech and how it changes our lives. And it absolutely does, right? Well, that's the case now with regard to what's happened with the University of Johannesburg. because they're breaking new ground in legal education with its trial-blazing virtual reality courtroom game. It's cutting edge. We need to find out more about what it means. I understand, the first of its type on the African continent. Professor Michelle van Eck is with me, Associate Professor and the Head of the Department of Private Law at the University of Johannesburg's Faculty of Law. Prof. Van Eck, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. I love to play games, and I'm not quite a lawyer. Maybe I had designs on being a lawyer once in my life, so maybe this is quite interesting. What's it about?
Yeah, so thanks for that. It's a very interesting approach that we're taking, where we created a virtual courtroom using virtual reality technology. So you put on the VC set and you explore through the courtroom and you play out a court case, which was obviously developed not just by lawyers, because we're not programmers. So this was in partnership with Prof. Abajide Ade Abajola from the Johannesburg Business School, specifically the Grit Lab. So it was a collaborative effort on our side to create a virtual engagement and to really allow for transfer of skills to our students through this game.
And interesting, I mean, you've answered the question to a degree, that it is targeted to the students, legal students, right? Law students.
Yes, and it's specifically to create this ability or transfer of knowledge on critical thinking and problem-solving skills, which is really foundational to our future lawyers.
How do you think this is going to be a game changer in terms of ultimately what you want? You want better lawyers, right?
Yes, so this is all based on gamification. So like you've said, playing games and then using games to transfer skills. So it is an add-on to the pedagogy, to the teaching approach to transfer additional skills. But added to this, it also creates a equal playing field for a lot of students that can't just get to the courts and they don't have those experiences. So this artificial engagement gives them that type of experience.
And so is it already being used, or is it to be used?
Yes, we launched it on the 19th of July. So there was the first use, and we are now rolling it out for our students. And what makes it quite special is it's not targeted for 1 year of law students. It's across all 4 years of the LLB. And it's also engaging with different disciplines within the legal field. So not just civil procedure, but contracts and DLEC and family law and so on. So it's cross-disciplinary in that sense.
Perhaps give us some idea of just, one or two of the characteristics of this game, this legal game, so that even those who are not attached to it can just understand it. Examples, what would play out?
Sure. So you start off in a law firm where you get welcomed by the receptionist and you go into a office. So very authentic in that sense. And you get briefed on a matter for your client. You eventually move on into the court scene itself, where you can go and explore. You can go and look around the court and you can understand how the court layout is. You're then presented with papers and so on, and the court game plays out from there with the witnesses and CCTV footages and so on, where you then have to answer a few questions. So it really is integrative in that sense.
And what has been the reaction from the students?
So far, we've had very excited students, very positive feedback, especially at the launch, but not just from our students, but also from industry partners in that sense. So it is very new, it is very innovative, it's something that hasn't been seen yet. So the potential is obviously quite high.
And lastly, is it open just to students only, or not? I mean, I would think
for the moment.
Yeah,
for the moment it is. Obviously, this is not the last of the virtual courtroom game at UJ. This is just the start. So we are looking at expanding this further than just the UJ law school.
Okay, certainly I like the sound of it. Let's see where that goes. Professor Michelle van Eck, appreciate your time. Associate Professor and Head of Department of Private Law at UJ's Faculty of Law. And that's for what? A virtual reality courtroom. I'm going to use gamification to do just that, right? So here's one before we get to news time. Ashraf Garda in Bonella. I somehow feel that you are taking a side in the issue of being South African. I feel nothing wrong was said by Minister Gayton McKenzie, and the timing of his second statement on the clip was perfect, because it seems, and this is the interesting part, it seems, and this is my words, okay? Now I continue. It seems middle-class people like yourself who have never spent a week in a township or a day in a shack do not know the challenges presented by foreigners, whether legal or not. As a matter of fact, if Bafana were to play Zimbabwe this weekend, Zimbabweans will fill the stadium and root for Zimbabwe, because that's who they are. They have jobs, so they can afford the transport and stadium entrance fee. When they raise the Zimbabwean flag, I'm sure you'll see it as a South African flag. Maybe the last part I don't agree. I won't see it as a South African flag. I think I do know the difference. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greco's.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Thank you, Ashraf. The IPID bill is signed into law and Russia launches massive air attack on Ukraine. Good day to you. President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed the Police Investigative Directorate Amendment Bill into law. The new legislation affirms the institutional and operational independence of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, or IPID. It empowers IPID to probe serious offences committed by police officers even while off duty. The amendment also provides for pre-employment security screening by the Directorate. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
The new law entrenches the institutional and operational independence of the IPID and makes it clear that the Directorate must be independent, impartial, and must exercise its powers and functions without fear, favour, or prejudice.
The former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, Cuban Naidu, says there are signs that the Government of National Unity is having a positive impact on the local markets and investors. He says among the good news is that global interest rates are likely to fall over the next year, which will ease financial conditions in emerging economies like South Africa. He was speaking at the Bureau for Economic Research conference in Sandton, north of Johannesburg.
The dollar is likely to slip a little, providing an impetus for commodity prices. South African interest rates are likely to come down as inflation stays close to the midpoint of the target range over the next 18 months, supporting a cyclical recovery in demand. There are already signs that the Government of National Unity is beginning to repair the mistrust between business and the state, reflected in the fall in the risk premium associated with South African bonds of over 100 basis points over the last couple of months. Throw in lower load shedding and higher freight volumes through our ports, and we could have a 3% growth next year.
The Western Cape Premier, Alan Winde, says one of the key focus areas of the provincial government's seventh term will be to improve fiscal sustainability. He was speaking during the opening of the provincial legislature address in Cape Town. He says the provincial government is also working on plans to boost revenue generation in the coming years.
We are determined to make it as easy as possible for the private sector to do business and create more jobs in our province. We are doing this through initiatives like cutting red tape or the ease of doing business. In the last term, saving business 2.4 billion rand. Small and medium-sized businesses are the engine room of our economy.
2 suspects have been arrested after the looting of 5 trucks and setting one alight during protest action in Atlantis on the Cape West Coast. They face charges of public violence, among others. Police spokesperson Wesley Twigg says fridges were stolen from the trucks and police and law enforcement were pelted with stones.
Following investigation into the looting, the members recovered 4 refrigerators so far. Searches for other appliances and goods that were stolen are still underway. 2 suspects aged 22 and 28 were arrested and faces charges of public violence, malicious damage to property and theft out of motor vehicle.
Further afield now, Ukraine's military says Russia's launched one of its biggest attacks using explosive drones overnight. It said all 89 drones were shot down along with another missile. Meanwhile, Russia's slow-moving advance into Ukrainian territory is grinding on. Russian forces made small but incremental gains in July, reportedly capturing 8 villages in the northeast, eastern and southern Ukraine. The BBC's Danny Eberhardt has more.
Mass bombardments put Ukraine's air defences under considerable strain.
This was overwhelmingly an attack with Ukrainian-designed explosive drones, as opposed to some of the more complex attacks using multiple ballistic and cruise missiles too. But drones can still cause huge damage. The capital, Kiev, was the main target. Officials there said more drones were used against it than any attack this year. Ukraine continues to strike back. Its military said it hit a weapons depot in the Russian region of Kursk. The local governor said only that what he called a facility had been hit overnight, causing a fire.
The top story, the President has signed the Police Investigative Directorate Amendment Bill into law. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Kuss.
And coming up in news sports this hour, South President delighted by medals haul in Paris and Sundown sweating over Williams' recovery. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The N3 southbound in Alexandra has a crash before London Road. The R21 southbound in Kempton Park has a crash near Voortrekker Road. In Midrand, the N1 southbound is a stationary vehicle just before Buccleuch Interchange, and the N1 northbound is slow moving towards Samrand Road. In KZN, the N2 southbound queuing on the off-ramp to the M7 highway, the N3 westbound queuing towards the Pavilion Shopping Centre exit, the M7 westbound and earlier truck crash at the N2 highway has been cleared, and the R102 southbound is slow moving near Old North Coast Road. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound slow moving towards Hospital Bend, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle after Gilbeson Drive, the M3 outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Racecourse Road, and the N7 Jakes Haville Drive southbound slow moving at Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Winners, finalists, fan favorites, and viral sensations from previous seasons of America's Got Talent return to the stage to compete for the All-Star title. Join Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Simon Cowell as they decide who is the best of the best. The creme de la creme, the top dog, is in Chamatota. It's a festival of talent on America's Got Talent All-Stars. Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. on S3. Channel your best entertainment with America's Got Talent All-Stars. Only on S3. Open up.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I'm going to chat to Randall Abrams shortly around telecom business and their presence in the digital spaces. That's one. We'll also chat to a big achiever coming up around 10 to 6, and we will play some of the sound from the former Minister of Home Affairs, Aaron Motsoaledi, in terms of his comments regarding how one becomes a South African citizen. Don't miss that. Here's a comment from Sai in Pietermaritzburg saying, Ashraf, the first country to use a flag was Denmark. Well, the oldest known flag still in use today being the Danish flag, also known as the Dannebrog, right? It was adopted in the 14th century around 1370. Denmark is widely recognized as the first. And then saying, great show. Well, thumbs up for the great show. Much appreciated. Thanks for the input around the flag too. I don't know if it is the first because I think, we have countries as we know them now. But I think as we had the previous message from, I think it was Lee in KZN, who made the point that in those years, even like centuries ago, they would have what we call countries. They could have small tribes that have their own fiefdom, and they had flags as well. So I think there's a difference maybe between modern countries and before. And I'd love to know, what did they do before they had flags to recognize who they are? But appreciate that, okay? And anybody else wants to give us some lessons around flags and the symbol of a country or a nation, I would certainly like to know. You can comment on some of the issues we've raised. As always, we ask that question, what for you moves the national pulse, and different things move it every single day. To call in, it's 0614 104 107. That's WhatsApp. And then to call in terms of actual calls, I'll read out that number, in fact, in a moment or so. Let me tell you, by the way, you can also WhatsApp, you can either tweet us, rather, and do that hashtag the National Pulse. You can tag SFM Radio and myself. Tell me where you're listening from, anywhere in the world, anywhere in this country, wherever. Tell me what you do as well, just so that I know who you are, right, and exactly what you're doing with your life. Let's get on to another issue with what is the ANC doing with their lives, because this is an important one. The DA ministers in the government of national unity are making the ANC look bad. Well, that's the claim anyway. They're doing that because of how they're outperforming the ANC counterparts. Now, it's a position put together and a piece written by News 24 journalist Siamthanda Kapa. I understand there's been some denials from the ANC, but let's get the story first in terms of what the ANC apparently said within their National Working Committee. So, Siamthanda, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, for having me.
Thank you.
And hello to listeners as well.
Absolutely. Well, they want to know what you're saying. So what is the story here?
So I think it's something that has been a conversation amongst society for a while now, what we're seeing playing out in terms of what the DA is saying it's doing. It's communicating, and everyone knows what Gaten McKenzie has been doing on Twitter. But now the ANC this week actually spoke about it behind closed doors. So the ANC's National Working Committee discussed the fact that their ministers are not appearing to be as competent as DA ministers. And it all boils down to communication, because the DA seems to have a stronger and more strategic communication strategy. So insiders in the ANC who spoke to us say that this was something that was discussed in the NWC on Monday.
Okay, so they raised the concern that we're being shown up effectively, right, on the one hand. Did they then offer solutions in terms of how can we be shown up by other parties? I mean, that's bad news. What do we do next?
100%. So these ANC senior members in the NWC then asked the minister and the presidency that's in charge of communications, government communications, that, listen, what are we going to do with our own ministers? What's the situation? And Nchaveni told the NWC that our ministers are afraid or are fearful or scared to speak to journalists and sometimes even communicate. So she was then asked to present a plan at the NEC that's starting tomorrow.
Okay, so, I think understandably they're going to be concerned about it. Did they, in terms of the NWC, did they then offer solutions? Because, the one thing, I think there's only two parts to it. One is if they're not communicating, and I think you made a point, they also don't want to face the media, So one is they're not communicating, but the other is more than communicating, is you still have to deliver. They're not delivering. And that's not my opinion. I think that's seen by the results of the May 29 election. Clearly, many people in the country believe so, and that's why they voted the way they have, isn't it?
It doesn't seem like the NEC, the NWC came up with any solutions at this point.
Well, I would think that they would need to, because that would be the big issue. Anything else that you'd like to share around that issue?
Not really, but it's just the significance of the story, because in the GNU, each party is driving its own agenda, and it's going to be very crucial coming to the 2026 elections, what each party does with the opportunity to be in the GNU. So this is also why this story is significant as well.
Now, I do note that the ANC itself, they've issued a statement effectively issuing a denial, right, to this entire claim. Are you surprised at that? Because you've got some insider information on it, right?
Yes, 100%. I stand by my story. The people who spoke to me are quite solid, and the ANC rejecting it for me also speaks volumes, because they don't always reject stories, and sometimes when you hit a nerve, they tend to come out and say something about your article. So I stand by my story.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of your story, I mean, for me, I would think what happens next with your story, besides getting the NWC inside the story, is to, I suppose, do a survey from the public in terms of how they perceive, like a few weeks into the new government, how they perceive who's fronting up in terms of positions and how do they appear one versus the other, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that the onus is on the ANC to look at how it goes about doing that as well. You know, how it's communicating and if it's doing good work, is it actually communicating it?
Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, feel free to tweet out the link to that story. We'll certainly gladly share it. Just tag SFM Radio and myself. We'll certainly share that story. Siaptanda Papa, thank you for your time. Journalist at News 24. Here's the broader question. In fact, that's something I've said myself, right? I said, you know what? One of the issues with regard to the government of national unity for the parties, well, let's call them the minority parties within the GNU, right, is they are going to, never mind the problems that they're going to experience, they're also going to see it as a massive shop window to try and prove to you and me that they can govern, that in whichever portfolios they're given, they're going to make a plan. Gayton McKenzie is one of them. He's not a DA member, but he was very clear about it when he told the EFF, you know what, you're not in Parliament, you're not in government, you're not an MP, a cabinet minister, but I've got a position, I've overtaken you. So I think, as an example, many are going to see it as an opportunity, both at national as well as provincial government, as a huge shop window. And the message, if I was asked by the ANC for advice, my advice to them was like, honestly, you need to up your game in terms of service delivery. First up, you need to absolutely up your game. Secondly, to the ANC, up your communications in terms of how you come across in the media. Start owning that media space. There are some ANC members who I think do it really well, but there's been many for a long time who've been absent, and the other parties have understood that, hold it, we're not going to say no to interviews because we know we are putting ourselves out in a shop window. That's branding, isn't it?
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
So Aaron Motsoaledi was the former Minister of Health. He's now the Minister of Health once again. In between all that, he's done different things. He also has been the Minister of Home Affairs. So on Kathy's show today, you know, the show from 9 to 12, please listen to the show. It's really, you need to listen to it daily. Anyway, on her show, she had a surprise caller. His name is Aaron Motsoaledi. And he called in on the issue that we've been talking about all day or the last 2 days regarding that person who's a contestant for the Miss South Africa. She's a finalist and she's got a background from Nigeria and a Mozambican background. And he offered this insight, keeping in mind that he's only not been the Minister of Home Affairs for a few weeks now, isn't it? So this is what he said.
I'm just entering the fray because I hear this debate raging. And I thought I could be of help to the debate. I'm not sure why, when you ask the question, whether you were asking it spiritually, politically, Ubuntu, I don't know. But I'm entering the question from a legal point of view because every country has to define who is its citizen. And this is defined for every country in their Citizenship Act. There's no country in the world that doesn't have a Citizenship Act, which defines who has got a right to their citizenship. But beyond, even before the domestication of such acts, internationally, they are about 3 methods which are used in order to determine citizenship of a person. The first one, which is called in Latin, is called jus sanguinis. Jus sanguinis means the right of blood, because sanguine is a Latin word for blood. So they say you have got a right of blood. Meaning what? It means if any of your parents, even if just one, but if any of your parents belong to that country, then a child so born out of that union becomes a citizen of that country, regardless of where the child is born, by the way, and regardless of when. You might have been born in Russia, China, America, Tanzania, but if one of your parents is a South African, you qualify to be a South African via jus sanguinis. The other one is called jus soli, which I believe many South Africans and many people, that may include quite a number of you in the media, believe that is the law in operation, which is not. It's called jus soli. Soli is a Latin word for soil. It means the right of soil, meaning the soil on which you land when you are born. You have got the right of that soil and you have got citizenship of that soil. Then the last one, which you are going to see a lot in the Olympics, is citizenship by merit, where countries just give you citizenship. They naturalize you, in other words. But because of merit, they want something from you, like your sports, prowess, your mental acumen, maybe you are a singer and all that. Then they are going to naturalize you because of your skill. They won't give that to everybody. Then every country out of that determine through their Citizenship Act how they then domesticate it. Now, globally, the whole of Europe, they are using jus sanguinis, the right of blood, except in Luxembourg. I don't know the reason. I thought it's because it's a small country. On the African continent, jus soli, the right of soil, is used in Lesotho, is used in Tanzania, is used in Chad. I forgot, Cape Verde. Otherwise, all the other countries on the African continent, they are using jus sanguinis, the right of blood, not the right of soil. The fact that you are born there doesn't mean then you have got citizenship, except if they decide to naturalize you. In the Americas, at the whole of North America are using jus sanguinis, and there are a few countries also in South America. So I just thought I need to define that, but that's a legal definition. I suspect your question was more rooted than law.
Look, and Dr. Motsoaledi, I must say that is also incredibly helpful, right? Looking at it through that legal prism, but it also shows that even just on the legal prism alone, this idea of what makes one a citizen can be looked at through different lens. And if you were to think about it, without necessarily having to rely on the technical criteria of what gives one entitlement to citizenship. We heard from Bramoro, who is Ghanaian, has been in South Africa for 10 years, and he says, if you take away my passport, I consider myself South African, but because of my passport, I'm actually Ghanaian. So the idea of what we are is so much more, perhaps, than just what might be written on paper. What makes you South African, Dr. Motsoaledi?
Well, Katie, I explained when I started that I don't know how you're asking the question, but I'm entering from the legal perspective. Yes, I said so.
Yes.
Now, the reason that every country defines that legal perspective is because your answer can have a million, your question can have a million answers. It's so wide that a million answers can be given about what makes me a South African. And that's why the easiest way is to define it in terms of the law and international conventions, which I've already explained. And some people will say I'm becoming a South African because I owe my allegiance to this country. I'm patriotic. I salute the flag. When the flag of South Africa rises up, like it happened with our Olympic gold medalist Tatjana, who started shedding tears when the flag was going up. If I salute that flag, I may feel that I owe allegiance to that country. But as I'm saying, there are million other parameters about that. And that's why I thought we also need to define it in terms of conventions internationally, but also in terms of the law in each and every country.
Do you have an answer for it personally around what makes you South African?
Well, I've already said so. I said I owe allegiance to this country. I fought for it. I salute its flag. I respect its national anthem, and I believe I'm fully South African in that regard.
That's Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. I think he sort of half answered it, because I think the part that's not clear about is this, that you can be a naturalized citizen of a country if you're given that, and then you're fine. So he doesn't say clearly whether this. It's like it's not allowed, because there are people who can come here as refugees and then apply for South African citizenship, and they're granted that. It's not everybody, but some people are granted that. Okay, let's talk about Telkom Business after this.
You wouldn't think of him without thinking of gold. Wade van Niekerk won gold and broke Michael Johnson's 17-year-old world record.
He's putting it away. It's an unbelievable victory by a huge margin. A century of history and 43.03.
Van Niekerk's performance at the men's 400-meter final will undoubtedly be remembered forever. Although he was running blind in lane 8, considered the worst lane on the track, the 24-year-old rider gave it his all and broke a 17-year-old record and won gold at the same time. South Africa left Rio with 10 medals and numerous first times. The country's athletes wrote their stories into the Olympic history books and will forever be admired for their achievements. Magical moments of the Olympics, brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
From 1936 to the future, from Ekaya, Ekas, to Jozi and Gurkan to the world, from dance and poetry to stages filled with our hopes and dreams, from SABC radio stations to cross-border triumphs, from drama, comedy and heart-pounding sport to raise our flag, from culture and spirit to the streets where talent is grown, from generation to generations and the shows that kept us entertained. So, what are you waiting for? Kumbule Kaya. SABC has always been home to our joy, stories, and Msanti's magic. Come home to SABC Plus, still home to the best of who we are.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that we want to do here on the National Pulse, besides talking about issues that drives the issues that affect us every single day, that effectively drives the pulse rate up or down, whichever way, is to also focus on innovation and the digital spaces, because it's that important. So you just absolutely have to embrace it, whatever your own skepticism around it. So it is that context that our conversation now, I think, is particularly important. It's with Telkom Business and their presence in the digital spaces. My guest is Randall Abrams, who's the Group Executive for Digital Solutions at Telkom SA. Randall, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much.
Much appreciated. You're playing in a very important space, and so is, by extension, Telkom, right? First of all, why is it important, business and digital combining?
Well, I think that, in real terms, if you're not connected, you're ultimately not in business. Being able to grow your business, develop your business, you have to be in the digital space. At the very least, you have to be connected via either mobile or via fiber broadband in order to grow your business, in order to be able to link with your customers, in order to be able to develop some sort of background information for banks as you go forward from a growth perspective. So digitization is really, absolutely paramount. And it's also not only a way to connect with customers, but your way to connect with the world.
And can I say that if you are not online but offline, that effectively you run the risk of making your own business and your offering obsolete?
That is the unfortunate truth. In 2024, I'm sure you know how many devices there are in the market, and not only communication devices, but point-of-sale devices. And the challenge that one has, if one isn't connected in that way, if one isn't even able to, as I say, communicate one-on-one with a client, your challenge is going to be that your competitor is going to be in that space. Your competitor is going to look at all those digital models for growth, and that you're certainly in time going to find yourself treading water.
Let's then talk about the Telkom offering. What can you provide in the digital space for customers, for business customers using Telkom Business?
Well, firstly, possible begins here from a Telkom perspective. So the first thing that everybody has got to think about is just connectivity. I mean, that's ultimately from a mobile or from a fiber broadband point of view, that's the first thing that you've got to do. The second thing is obviously, if there are opportunities to either market your business if you can find a tool in order to market your business, I think that is really, really important, because that's how you're going to grow your customer base. And we have two fantastic software as a service. I'm sure that a lot of your listeners would have seen the AAS emblem. So software as a service, we have a fantastic marketing tool that allows you to reach out and grow. And software as a service means that you then obviously are going to keep up with what's out there, because that's the other thing. A lot of people, when it comes to growing their business and even understanding the digitization of their business, they get a bit overwhelmed, and one can understand that because there are so many products that are out there. So considering an as-a-service offering means that you're able to maintain pace without having to always go and purchase a product and suffer potential redundancy.
Okay, so therefore, in terms of the one or two products that we can zone in on, right, that you'd like to tell us about that you think people should seriously consider.
Great. So Telkom Business Zoho, it offers a suite of smart and customizable applications, which include Zoho Books. I spoke a little bit earlier about how important it is to maintain an all-in-one accounting solution. This one has automatic bank feeds as well, and that's really, really important when growing your business, because at some stage, firstly, you're going to have to pay the tax man, but secondly, when you go to a financial institution in order to apply for a loan, they're going to immediately want to see that you've kept your records in order. Zoho also has a fantastic customer management tool, a CRM tool. Offers comprehensive solution to run a very sophisticated CRM function. It has a layer called Zoho People, which offers automation in the HR space, also extremely important when running a business. And last but not least, a marketing automation tool, which allows you to engage with your customers. And CRM, understanding your customers, so having a 4K view as opposed to a 360p view of your customer is so important. It's not only significant to grow your customer base, but having a real handle and a real understanding of your customer needs is so significant.
Now, just as we wrap up, I remember a few years ago when I moderated some event and the phrase big data came up. It's like, what are they talking about? Big data is now big news right now. But let's then talk about that, the use of data analytics. What does that mean, and how does the business use that to enhance or to create efficiency within what they do?
So I think, it's a fantastic question, and I spoke about this, this image of having a customer at 360p versus having a customer at 4K. The better you understand the customer and your broad customer base, the better job you're able to do in targeting them with your specific products, in building a relationship with them through a tool like WhatsApp, for example. And I think if you look at, there's a very big retailer in South Africa, I won't mention their name, but the work that they've been able to do with data, they've been able to be very, very successful in understanding their clients, and that offers the client a much better experience when they engage with a business. And it helps that business in order to continue growth. So CRM platforms, and it doesn't really matter the size of your business, because and it doesn't matter what type of business you're in, having a real on-the-money understanding of your customer and their needs is the one thing that is going to ensure growth.
And it's something we've never had the privilege of having before, which then brings me to the very end in terms of your offering at Telkom. this just play out in 30 seconds this phrase and what it means to Telkom. Possible begins here.
Well, I think that what we want to do is we want to, through digital connectivity, ensure that people's lives are ultimately enhanced, that they're not only able to communicate with one another on an extremely powerful network, but that they're able to develop, be it personal or business relationships, products that they're able to engage with at a level that they can't on other networks. And that's why I feel that we're, certainly from a business point of view, it's not so much a case that we want to say, well, we have a plethora of products that you can go and search. We obviously have all the essentials, but rather that we try to understand the business of our customers and of small businesses, SMMEs, and are able to offer them, especially in the case of something like software as a service, the type of product that doesn't become redundant, that works for them ultimately and helps them grow their business. Because that really must be the focus of the work that we do from a connectivity point of view.
Absolutely should, right? Randall Abrams, thanks for your time. Group Executive for Digital Solutions at Telkom SA. And if you've remembered some things and missed out on others, just remember this: possible begins here. That really should get you thinking about what happens next. A slightly delayed news headlines. Here's Greg Coase.
Thank you again, Ashraf. In the headlines, Africa has the second highest number of ranger deaths in the world, exceeded only by Asia. The president has signed the Police Investigative Directorate Amendment Bill into law, and Qatar says the killing of a senior Hamas leader is a violation of international and humanitarian law. A full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Sandton has a crash before Grayston Drive. Baysnodere Drive northbound in Melville has delays towards Thomas Bowler Street. In Midrand, the N1 southbound has a stationary vehicle before Buccleuch Interchange, and the N1 northbound is slow moving towards Samrand Road. In KZN, the N2 northbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction. The N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley Interchange. Chris Hani Road westbound is queuing at the N2 highway, and Umgeni Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park. In Northwest, the N12 has a truck crash reported between Wolmaranstad and Klerksdorp. The roadway is blocked, so you're asked to expect delays. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road. The N2 outbound is queuing towards Bunga Avenue. Outbound has a stationary vehicle after Hilberson Drive. The M3 Philip Hosana Drive outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend, and the N7 Jakes Hartwell Drive southbound is slow moving at Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, Toby. So we spoke earlier about medals. You gave your views, you asked me mine, and I said I don't have an opinion because I'm not an expert on it. But certainly somebody else knows.
It is the SASCOC president, Barry Hendricks, and he says that he's happy with Team South Africa's performance at the ongoing Olympic Games. Team SA currently has 1 gold through swimming ace Tatiana Smith and 2 bronze medals across men's rugby sevens and mountain biker Alan Hatherley. South Africa are well on track to go past their Tokyo 2020 tally of 3 medals just 5 days into the current games, with more swimming and track and field events still to come. And Hendricks says he's very optimistic.
In Tokyo, we received 3 medals. We've already now equaled that. We're looking, if I look at the social media that's going on and the front page headlines today in South Africa, we've already achieved the hype that we wanted to achieve with the South African public that believes in our athletes, that believes in the work that we do as the South African Sports Confederation, Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And we had a fantastic meeting with Bidvest as well as Mr. Price Sport, and they've committed partnerships, especially Bidvest. They've told us, based on their experience here, their personal experience, to see the athletes, to meet the athletes at the Games Village, and to see the performances, they are committing to support South African sport even further and even better.
Well, South Africa are 14th on the medal table and obviously looking forward to more medals, with Smith and Kayleen Corbett to compete in the 200-meter breaststroke semi-final tonight, and that is at 3 minutes past 10. And Peter Kutze also swimming tonight in the 200-meter backstroke semi-final, and that is around at 21:47. In women's football, it's almost the business end of the Women's Olympic Football Tournament group stage, with 6 of the 8 spots in the quarterfinals quarterfinals still up for grabs. In Group A, hosts France. A point will see them through against a New Zealand side who must win to stay in within a chance, while Colombia will advance to the last 8 if they avoid defeat against Canada, who know that they need a win to go into the quarterfinals, and those clashes are at 9 p.m. USA, on the other hand, face Australia with qualification already secured from Group B, and the Aussies will join them should they avoid defeat, while Germany, from their part, they will progress from a point against a Zambian side in need of victory to have any hopes for themselves, and those fixtures at 7 p.m. In the other fixtures, Brazil just need a point against already qualified Spain to join them from Group C. That game is currently on. It's 38 minutes into the match. It's still goalless. And in terms of Japan, they just need a draw against Nigeria, who need a win from other results to go their way. And it's not looking good for Nigeria. Japan are currently leading 2-0, 36 minutes into the match. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns have been dealt a blow with the ongoing injury to club captain and goalkeeper Ronald Williams. The 32-year-old hurt his shoulder while playing for South Africa at the recent Africa Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast. He subsequently missed the Brazilians' pre-season tour of Austria and has since been reportedly undergone surgery to his shoulder and is now expected to miss the start of the Betway Premiership campaign. Meanwhile, head coach Manqoba Mngqithi says that he's looking forward to the start of the new season, starting with the MTN 8 quarterfinals against Polokwane City.
We must move away from this obsession of positions, guys. This is killing our country in many ways. Positions are not the most important thing. In my opinion, a position is the lowest point of leadership. What is more important is your level of influence in everything you're doing. And I'm never a fan of positions, and I'm never perturbed when I see all this, because I like in our country we've got different positions and names. Maybe tomorrow I will also get a new position and you will get so excited and incensed sometimes. But positions usually for me, the work has not started. According to some writers, they say the first thing you have to worry about as a leader is the permission. Do you get the permission to lead from those you lead? And the permission you will only get if a person believes as a leader you possess the qualities of leadership, which is your intellectual capacity, which is your selflessness, which is your trustworthiness, which is your sternness, and all these other qualities that make somebody to say, I'm happy to be led by this guy. But this position thing it's not the most important. And there is a level beyond that, and I will waste your time.
Well, today just talking about the coach rankings within the club. And talking about the MTN 8, the prize money for this year's MTN 8 tournament has been increased from 8 million rand to 10 million rand. Also, participating teams will now get 1 million rand instead of 800,000 rands. Anything's off with rugby. The Springboks are set to leave for Australia today for the Castle Lager Rugby Championship. The Boks will launch this year's edition of the Southern Hemisphere Series against the Wallabies on the 10th and 17th of August in Brisbane and Perth, respectively. They arrive tomorrow with training sessions to continue on Friday. And Springboks coach Rassie Rasmus says that they're anticipating a great challenge, but they will definitely give their best. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. Okay, I'm not
going to comment about the medals. Just let's have a good night. And we expect 2 South Africans in the pool to advance to the finals tomorrow.
Why are you not going to be optimistic and say 3 instead of 2?
Okay, well, that's why you're here. You have to teach me when I'm ill-informed, you then inform me.
Okay.
I mean,
there's exactly 3 South Africans swimming today. We're hopeful for 3 more.
Well, exactly. We'll talk tomorrow about the 3 South Africans. Thanks for that, Jimmy. Right,
Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
At Specsavers, we're committed to offering affordable and professional eye care. That's why we're offering 1,500 Rand worth of savings with our winter promotion. Get a free frame up to the value of 1,500 Rand or use the 1,500 Rand on one of our leading lens enhancements. To qualify, simply purchase a comprehensive eye examination and prescription frame and lenses Book online or call your nearest store today. Specsavers, for affordable eye care and a whole lot more. T's and C's apply.
When Freddie, a troubled woman, is nearly assaulted outside a nightclub, the toilet attendant steps in to help. Baba, a former child soldier, acts with swift, unstoppable brutality. She's entranced. The pair form an instant, intoxicating connection. Something dark within both of them quickly emerges. Soon, they set about exacting revenge on people from Freddie's past. Baba's skill for violence and Freddie's tinge of psychopathy prove a lethal combination. But they are not the only ones on the hunt. We hunt together, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 24th of July. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
S3. Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Absolutely, you can count on Jimmy Moya, as always, is in the hot seat with the SAFM market update. Jimmy, go ahead.
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening to our listeners. Today we've got quite an interesting show. Yet again, we're going to continue that conversation that we had yesterday with Jonathan Oppenheimer on entrepreneurship, legacy and sustainability. We've got some more of that conversation. As I said, it was quite a lengthy conversation, so we had to split up how we play it out over the airwaves, but we've got the rest of that conversation there. We've also got a conversation with AECI Limited. They're a listed company in South Africa that deals in mining and chemicals business, and they reported their interim results for the 6 months ended June. We're going to speak to the company's CEO around that performance and understand what's been happening there. There's been quite a significant number of losses there. They've decided to forego an interim dividend that they paid out last year, so we're going to get a sense of what's happening with that business there and where to from here for them. Then we've got a conversation with SACTEC around some of the developments in the hydropower space. It looks as though Total Energies, following yesterday's conversation that we had around Total stepping away from the gas project, they seem to have picked up some hydropower assets on the other side of the South African coastline. So we're going to speak to the sellers of those assets and see what's happening there, what it means for renewable energies, and also what the direction is for NERSA now. We know that Eskom had applied to NERSA for that reservation of allocation with regards to those renewable power producers, and they were denied that application. So we're going to dig into that in a little bit more detail as well. And then because it's Wednesday, we've got our Executive Lounge feature, and this week we are chatting to the CEO of Pragma. I'm joined in studio by Scott Gibson to just understand what he does and what Pragma gets up to as a business and what he does when he's not being a company CEO. But before we get to that, the markets have certainly had a really good day, especially closing out the month of July, and resources seemingly leading the charge there. But Henko Kreer has been keeping an eye on those markets for us throughout the day. He joins me now to give us a quick summary of what's been happening in the world. Good evening, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. What's been happening? I see the Rand is back at 18 Rand 20-ish, but resource counters clearly running away with today.
Yes, Jimmy, good evening to you and to Ashraf and to me. Good evening to all of our listeners. And it's quite nice to be the bearer of good news today, because it was a green day all around the world. In the US, the Dow Jones is trading 0.6% stronger, the S&P 500 about 2% up at this stage, and the Nasdaq 2.6% stronger. And then in Europe, the FTSE 100 as well as the CAC 40 both finished the day 0.9% up, and the DAX finished 0.4% stronger. And then the JSE's all-share index finished the day 1.95%. That's almost 2% stronger at the end of the day, at a new high of 82,765 points. The industrial index gained 1.1%. The financial index finished 1.6% stronger. And listen to this, the resources index 0.6% up. Some of the companies that gave strong performances today were your mining companies, like you can see out of the resources index, that big jump in that index, like Sibanye-Stillwater as well as Harmony, both finished the day 7.5% up. Goldfields and Implats each gained 6%. Anglo Gold and Northam each finished the day 4.3% stronger. On the negative side, yes, there were some companies that gave poorer performances today, but those companies which closed lower today didn't close lower by a lot. For example, Alphaman, Afrimat, Vukile, they each lost 1% today, and Grindrod and Mondi and the Life Healthcare Group only lost about 0.5% at the end of the day. Among the 10 largest companies on the stock exchange, Anglo 3.2% stronger, Glencore finished 2.9% up, and BHP, Naspers and FirstRand each gained 1.5% today. And yes, then like you mentioned, at the moment, 18 Rand and 19 cents to the US dollar, looking great and about 0.7% stronger against the US dollar today. Then 19 Rand 69 to the euro, 11 Rand 88 to the Australian dollar, and 23 Rand and 37 cents is what you'll pay for a British pound. And on the commodities market, the gold price is $2,420 an ounce, silver is $28.70, platinum $977, and palladium $926 an ounce. And Brent crude trading at $80.14 a barrel. And then lastly, the price of a Bitcoin, $66,400, and that is 1.3 million rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. We're certainly going to be digging into these and other stories when we come back a little later on. I've got David Shapiro of Sasfin Wealth on markets with me today, so we've got lots to unpack. But for now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Perfect, and you enjoy your show, 6 to 7. That's followed by Top Sport from 7 to 8, so lots to talk about. Now, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, we're going to talk to him next.
South Africa's Golden Girl just knew how to silence all her critics with gold. Caster Semenya won gold in the women's 800 meter and made all South Africans proud, setting a new national record.
Semenya looks over her shoulder and she's away. The winning time is going to be terrific. She comes through 1:55.46. Well, that smashes the world list.
Rio was electrical. The 25-year-old brought Team SA the second gold medal and became the first black South African woman to do so. The weeks after, the Games continued to reveal more criticism, including Britain's Lindsay Sharp, who felt Caster had an unfair advantage. South African excellence got the world talking. She undoubtedly left a remarkable footprint. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Winners, finalists, fan favorites, and viral sensations from previous seasons of America's Got Talent return to the stage to compete for the All-Star title. Join Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Simon Cowell as they decide who is the best of the best. The creme de la creme, the top dog, is in Chamatota. It's a festival of talent on America's Got Talent All-Stars. Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. on S3. Channel your best entertainment with America's Got Talent All-Stars. Only on S3. Open up.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
A shortened message from a listener. I'm just going to cut it short because of time, saying, Ashraf, I'm really enjoying our political dynamics, especially the competitiveness amongst the DA and the ANC ministers. Well, one of the ministers from the ANC is the former Minister of Home Affairs, then Minister of Health. So we thought we'll talk to him because we played his clip earlier on, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. But in fact, the clip we played, he wanted to say something more beyond just what we played. So, Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, good chatting to you on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon or good evening, Ashraf, and good evening to the listeners of SAFM.
Much appreciate you doing.
Very much for having
well,
me.
I'm glad that you've done what I think any great communicator does, where if you think you've left something out, you want to add on to it. So go ahead and tell us what's the change between what you said to Kathy earlier on.
No, it's just to add and correct at the same time. When I mentioned the issues of citizenship in different countries of the world, when I mentioned jus soli, the right of soil, and jus sanguinis, the right of blood, I made a mistake about the U.S. because the U.S. are descendants of the British, and so they use jus sanguinis because that system is from Europe. But because U.S. took people to slavery over many years, and they took them from the African continent, and they could not bring them back, at least not all of them. All the black Americans who are there, Afro-Americans who are there, come from Africa. They then had to amend their constitution, and they did so via the 14th Amendment to include jus soli. So they are using two systems. of citizenship, the right of soil and the right of blood at the same time. That's what confuses people, because America is a very powerful country in the world.
I understand.
The
well,
second thing I just want to add,
yes,
because you said I didn't complete, when you were listening, I didn't complete what I was saying.
Yeah.
Yes, people do get naturalized for various reasons. Others is because they've been having permanent residence in the country for more than 5 years in terms of South African law.
Right.
And if you stay here continuously in that 5 years, you don't go anywhere, then you deserve to apply for citizenship. And you were right. People become refugees and sometimes later on apply to be for permanent residence first and then naturalization. But there is also naturalization, which is what word can I use? I don't want to say emergency naturalization, which is fast-tracked. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. It gets fast-tracked if the country really believes they need you. You may remember during the Guptas, there was naturalization which was fast-tracked.
Absolutely.
And the parliament did it.
And the reverse happened to Zola Bud, by the way. Zola Bud to Britain, the reverse happened there for her to compete in the Olympic Games. So that does happen, yeah.
Yes. So Parliament then made a law that once a person is naturalized outside the prescribed period, then within 2 weeks of that naturalization, the minister must come to Parliament and give the names of all the people who were naturalized in that period and give the reasons.
I understand. Okay. Well, I'm glad you've cleared that up, right? Okay. So just while I've got you here now, you're new in the new position with regard to the Ministry of Health. I mean, what is your understanding about what's happened with this whole Miss South Africa saga? What can you tell us?
Ashraf, when I was talking to Tracy, I was not even aware that was the issue. I just happened to get into a car, switch on the stereo, and heard her asking people what makes them South Africans. And I thought it's my job as a person who was the custodian of citizenship to explain how it comes about. On this issue, really, I don't have all the facts. I just know that there's a war raging about it. But I think you gave an answer during the day when you said it all depends on what Home Affairs is going to say. When you go to Home Affairs to check, that's the only thing that can give a final answer to this whole.
Okay, and since you're not Home Affairs, we can't push you for that any longer. Thank you for clearing that up. I think next step, Home Affairs. Much appreciate your time. Look forward to having another chat with you around health issues very, very soon. Much appreciate your time, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. Okay, there's some comments that we've got. Atuka, first of all, wants to comment on Miss South Africa. Hi, Atuka.
Evening, Ashraf and listeners.
Thank you. Go ahead. Your point.
Yeah, I think we're approaching this from the wrong perspective. A few years back, there was a very same incident that happened in Nigeria, only that the roles were reversed. The Nigerian government and the Nigerian people rejected that Nigerian that had a South African mother, and I understood their reasons. That this person does not share our culture, our value, our norm, the way we do things. A pattern such as in South Africa, you become an ambassador for the country. You can be a citizen all you want, but you don't share in our culture, our values, the way we do things, the way we want you to represent us.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. I'm just going to push it because this time is against us, right? I hear that. But remember, not everybody has to be perfect in terms of integrating into culture to be given citizenship. I think you've heard that very clearly now from the former Minister of Home Affairs 2 minutes ago. So got that, Atuka. Thanks for that one. Let's get another thought on the ANC's story that we covered earlier on. Prince in Durban, hi.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good indeed. Right, go ahead.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment on the story that was published, I think, today. Yep. That was saying that the ANC is worried that the DA minister seems to outperform them. Mm-hmm. So, which I find it very strange because I'm not sure what exactly the DA ministers have done. Because even the lady that was there giving clarity on the story is making examples of Gayton Mackenzie, who we know that is not really a DA minister. The only person that I've seen in the media is Helen Zille, who is not a minister. So I'm not sure exactly what the DA ministers have done. Okay. So it seems to me this is just another narrative to project the DA as if they are doing something in government when they have not done actually nothing.
Well, I mean, ultimately, let's see how it plays out, because remember, this was from an ANC insider point of view, not from a DA point of view, right? But okay, got that. Thanks for that. Thanks for that call. There's a couple of voice notes. Let's see if I can play one or two very quickly. There's one from about Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Let me see if Patrick can assist me on that. In fact, we'll get to the second one. Hopefully, we'll do. All right, let's get to the second one. And in fact, let's get to the first one once again. I need to just rewind before we end the show.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, I'm so glad that Minister Aaron Motsoaledi is back into his old portfolio. I'm very glad for him. This comes from Terence.
Okay, Terence, got that. And the last one is again about Gayton and Imbalula.
Ashraf, good evening to you. Good evening, your team. Great show always. It's good to hear your voice, man. What a show. It's Uncle JJ, the truck driver in Western Cape. Ashraf, you were right. You see, Getty Mackenzie is now behaving like Malula. I think he's overexcited to be a minister. I think this guy, if he could not get any post, it was going to be a disaster. He's in a hungry of being well known or of being a celebrity. I don't understand. He was supposed to answer what the question he has been asked, not to talk about the foreigners, this guy.
Okay, that's it. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence. I appreciate that you like listening to me, and I'm glad that I'm here in this hot seat hosting the National Pulse. It's been great. It's been over 100 days now, and myself and my team, we've got Patrick pushing the buttons today, but certainly the rest of the team, we've got, we're together with, certainly with Temba and Keys and Rusani, making all of this up, and we make it work every single day, including the news readers, which is my cue to say goodbye, because it's just gone 6 o'clock, and Greg House has the news.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Enjoy the rest of your evening. In this news update, spotlight on ranger deaths in Africa, and the IPID bill is signed into law. Good evening. Africa has the second highest number of ranger deaths in the world, exceeded only by Asia. According to the International Ranger Federation, 140 rangers died between June last year and May this year. This comes as the globe marks World Ranger Day today. Chris Galliers, the president of the